So, welcome to my first episode of my first podcast. In this episode, I will try to get some sort of understanding of how Zone is viewed around the world. I've been talking to a lot of people in a lot of countries, just sort of get an image of how you play Zone Lasertag competitively around the world. And to get some sort of reference, I'm using the international format played at Worlds, and I have been comparing the local formats played around the world to Worlds. So hopefully when you've listened to this, what probably will be a very long podcast, you should have some understanding of how Zone is interpreted. So the countries I've been interviewing are first Finland, then Germany, France, New Zealand, the US, Australia, and lastly my home country Sweden. And it's really interesting because I've sort of shifted in opinions depending who I've been talking to, because all countries have very valid points of playing the way they do, and it's not like when you talk to countries they will be like, yeah, maybe we should do it like this instead, but they are mostly aware of the formats that are being used around the world. It's just that they have chosen to play it their way, and understandably so once you talk to them and hear their input on why. So one might say that the purpose of this podcast is not to give any straight answer to what's the best way of playing Zone, but rather to create some sort of understanding between countries and promote international gameplay, like for people to travel, try out other ways of playing, and maybe together further down the road find common ground when it comes to how it should be played. Because as it is now, we got a situation where many countries play differently, some just slightly different like Sweden and Finland, and some very different, like let's say Europe and Australia. And what I think is that, let's say we want to try how an Australian format in Sweden, and we do the settings, we set everything up exactly the same as in Australia, and we play it. I guarantee, we haven't done it, but I guarantee you we will say, oh, this is not good. And the reason is that our play style does not really match the Australian format. Our arena does not match the Australian format. For instance, I would say it goes the same way with the US as well. Our arenas are not built for the US format, and our players do not play the US format. So once you just add it in the computer and start it up, we don't really know how to do it. We would just do it the European way, which is sort of stupid because that's the way to play the European format. And the same would probably go if you went down to Australia and just started a game with a European or Worlds or American format. They would not, probably see the point of it, because they have to come to America or Europe and play it there, like GP has done. They went to Australia and played in Australia, and at first when they practice at home they were a little like, okay, what's this? And then they get down there and when they report back they said like, this is really cool. But the reason I think is because they went there and played it on native soil, on the format's native soil, that is. So all I'm doing here is interviewing people and sort of giving you the knowledge about how they play it, and you shouldn't judge how they play. If you want to judge it, I suggest you first go there and play a tournament, and then you can speak your mind. Okay then, so first I interviewed Finland, and the guy I'm interviewing is Vilpu. He is a quite new player, is very active in the Finnish Council, in World Council, and generally has a lot of input in how he wants the game to be played. Now this was the first interview I did, so it might not be the best constructed interview, and a lot of things I'm asking other countries I failed to ask him, and I'm too lazy to do another one. So but anyway, let's just listen to it. I will give you some thoughts about it afterwards. So I'm here with Vilpo from Finland, who's representing Finland in the World Council and who participated in the World Championships in Belfort with the team SFP, ending up 5th, I think.
Yeah, I think it was 5th because we almost got to the finals but dropped out before that.
Yeah. The team who came 4th was much better.
Yeah.
Anyway, nice to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be.
So, could you tell me a little bit about the activity in the Finnish zone?
Well, it's kind of short for now because I have only been in zone for about 4 or 5 years. And from my perspective, it has been quite a busy year lately. Now we're really booming, trying to get the scenes to be active and make connections to different countries and different scenes all across the world.
Yeah, and during the nationals in Jyväskylä 2016, you had 16 teams, and now you had 15 teams. But I know that you had some teams that didn't even fit into the tournament because it was full.
Yeah, I think for this tournament, these nationals, and also for the nationals to come, there will be a problem how we are going to qualify the teams for the nationals, because at the moment for the European Championship and also for the Finnish nationals, there will be a lot of teams that are keen on participating from Finland and also from across the world.
Oh yes, and you do have some of the best teams in the world on the international formats.
We have quite a few good teams, but I think we are going to, and we hope that we will have the challenge from Swedish teams as well in the future.
Oh, you will.
It's the duel of us.
Oh yes, you will. And you have joined a new team since Worlds?
Yes, I have actually joined Score Bandits, which was a team that has been participating earlier, but they had a few people that dropped out, so we went in and replaced those with me and another player from Jyväskylä, December. So now we form a complete team and we're going to go for the top again.
I see. And something that I have been wondering personally, now that you have Hemmo on the team as well, who also played with SFP, has been playing with SFP for a very long time. Will we see more of SFP in the future?
I can't personally. I can't say anything about that because, of course, everyone from SFP will decide for themselves. A lot of SFP have been pondering over the question if they are going to continue on zone, but I hope they will get the enthusiasm and keep on going because I like those guys and girls really much, and I hope that the team and the players will keep on sticking with zone. I think they will.
Yeah, and just so people know, so SFP has been around for a very long time. They played in Tampere Worlds under the name of Tampere Old School. I don't know if they played in Syracuse, but they came 3rd in Australia in Worlds there. They just a few years back, they actually beat GP in Helsinki. That's the GP home turf in the Finnish Nationals and took home the Finnish Nationals. So it's a very classic team. In Finland, you have started a national organization.
Yeah, that's true.
Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, the idea originally came from how we wanted to develop the scene, because at the moment the scene is very much reliable on how individual people want to do something to create tournaments and create different things. So from my perspective and from the perspective of many other people, the individual goal is not enough to create something that is to create something stability and something that keeps on going after years and years. So we wanted to have some kind of structure to keep on going and creating the scene and doing good for the scene even after people have passed. Because I think after all, if we just rely on people, individuals will make each other passive. Because if there's a wise person that says that things should be this way, okay, this might be a wise person, but when this person is long gone, the people that have followed him or her might not take the initiative to keep on doing the work because they have all their time they have just been following. So the structure will preserve the continuous development.
Oh yes. Let's talk a little bit about how you play it in Finland.
Sure.
Because you're not playing with the world's format, so to speak, and you are not playing with Swedish settings, nor American. You have your own settings in many aspects. So the one that most people find intriguing is that you use 7/3 on timing, and you're the only country in the world who does that. Could you comment that?
Well, originally I have no clue because of my short background where does the 7/3 come from. So it's quite hard from that perspective to comment on the 7/3. But I find it that for the Finnish playstyle, we really like the fast-paced game, and also kind of like that you have still the time to make some kind of tactical movements, and in example like micro movement to try to fake dual situations or so on. So it's I have heard of quick play style, quicker than ours and also slower than ours, but I think the mid ground is good. I've gotten used to that, so
yeah, I see.
Yeah,
tradition is a strong thing.
Yeah, that is true.
So if we just talk timing for a short second here.
Yeah, sure.
You played Swedish nationals at least 2 or 3 times, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And we always play with 6/3. Have you noticed difference when you play in Sweden? Is it because we didn't even know you played 7/3? Honestly, we found it out last year, and I've been playing every Finnish Nats except for the one in Pori since I don't know when, for a very long time.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't noticed that either. So it's I think it's not like a thing that would different us from you. So the difference of 1 second is non-existent, to be honest. It's just the matter of how you put the settings in.
Yeah. So that brings us to the world's format that has the 8 seconds deactivation time. For us Swedes, it was very apparent when we came to Worlds, like this is not how we play this. This is new. Did you experience that?
Well, as the same as in Swedenats, I think I didn't really notice the big difference between Finnish the 7/3 and the 8/4. I think it is.
Yeah, 8/4. Yes.
So I don't think it's a problem. It might be the difference when it comes to 2 seconds from 6/3 to 8/4, but for us, at least for me, it wasn't that big of a difference. So it was quite smooth transition from our style to the world style.
Good for you.
yeah, that is.
So if we look at something that has been, because we have been debating it a little bit in Sweden, like could we accept 8 seconds of deactivation on comp? This is competition. Yep. And we have said more or less like, yeah, we could do 8, but we cannot do 8/4. It has to be 8/3. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think for my viewpoint, the 8/3 would be more like optimal, because when you think of zone equipment, especially Nexus and Helios, the stun is kind of a thing that can make a difference in many situations. So basically, many people use the stun as a tool for making plays. So if you're trying to push the stun further on and you're trying to make it more like it cancels out the like bring it closer to the act, then I think that would be worse, because you can keep on doing stunts while you're stunned until you take the 3 hits, basically. Yeah. So I think it would be more optional to have the shorter stun, because that doesn't ensure you any kind of invulnerability, but it does give you a chance to dodge it out for the 3 seconds. And 3 seconds is quite a long time still.
Yeah. So when you play elimination, you have chosen to play with 4 teams?
Yeah, that's true.
In Sweden, we play with 2. We won't get into that too much. But if we compare your 4 teams with 3 that was used in the Worlds, what do you think?
Well, if I look to the 3 teams, it's kind of like if you look at the Elim, it's usually people trying to hold their own positions. 3 teams would do if people hold their positions, but if teams go against each other, then it would create a problem for the third team has the need to go and pick the points, the 3 points. And I think that's a problem if there's one team that can, in one possible opportunity, take the whole area and score points for free and take the free victory. So I think the 4 teams is good for keeping like the stability, so that 2 teams, if they focus on each other, can't really play the game for the third team for a free victory.
Totally agree. One thing that will differ in the European Championships, European Championships is basically played on Finnish settings with 2 exceptions. It is the base run that is played with 6-3, as in Sweden, and the elimination is played with 1 shot every 2 seconds. What do you think about that?
I have to admit, I love that setting, because let's say the weasel I am to try to snatch some points from the backs. I like that I have the option to move a lot during and between the shots. So basically, if I can, and when I do, make these gun movements and try to make the opponent to throw some useless shots, then I can use the whole 2 seconds to move to a different position, and that's quite a lot for myself, because that suits my playstyle very well. But on top of that, I like the idea that you have to preserve your shots and you don't just shoot free shots.
So I mean, okay, it suits your playstyle, but how do you think that the average Finnish player thinks about it?
I think the average would agree, because mostly the people that are against changes are those that have gotten used to a certain play style and have gotten used to the 1 shot per second. And those people are the old players, let's say so. So I think for the average, it would be fine if we just commonly agree that we will move to the 1 shot per 2 seconds.
Yeah, I'm hoping for that at least. Okay, moving on to the world settings, because we have been playing, both of us have been playing Worlds quite recently. We did talk about the 8-4, I won't mention that, but there are 2 other things that springs to mind. It's the comp games are 12 minutes long in the world format. What do you think about that?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is the longer, the easier it is to get the bases. I'd say that if there's a lot of time to get the bases and you don't add up to the player count, then it would eventually take out the idea of defending your own base, because eventually you would have to put so much effort into defending your own base in order to not to let the enemy team to get all the bases for themselves. So you would have to find a good mean ground from between the long game time and the player amount, so that there would not be like straight away all bases for every player kind of games.
Exactly. One thing that has been brought forward is that the shorter the games are, the more sensitive the game is for base flopping. Do you think that makes sense?
Yeah, maybe so. But I think that's not the first point where base swapping comes into option because, okay, it will bring profit to both teams, but after all, it's all about how you structure your gameplay. Because base swapping won't be a thing if you have your basic tactics ready for it.
That's
And
true.
also if you make it so, there has been a lot of discussion about this, how you are going to give points according to if you're first or second. So it would, if you give the like demand and need for people to get first, I think that will rule out a bit from the need to do base swaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like especially if we go further on to the, well, we're talking about worlds, so we expect that all the teams are good teams and like rational and talented teams. So I think if there's a team that is not ready for base swaps, then I'm not sure if we do have to be prepared to change the games to fit them.
No, that's true. Very good point. Another thing that's different in Worlds is the reloads.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about using reloads in the comp?
That's a bit difficult thing because the reloads are usually capped into a few reloads, and if you think of a game where there's 3 bases, you can straight away notice that there will be unevenness with the reloads because you are attacking 3 bases and there's 2 reloads, so there will be bases that are not as even as the others when you're thinking about attacking or defending.
Yeah.
So I think reloads essentially give some problems to base play because you would have to go further on to take the bases. But of course, on the other hand, they will give advantage to surprise because if you can snatch a few, let's say, players out of the question, you can tag them out so they have to go to reload. Then it will give you tactical advantage to the team that is either defending or attacking.
So if someone came up to you and said, "Okay, reload, keep it or leave it,"
I'd say taking it out from the game because that would open all the possible choices for everyone to do different things for base play.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the upcoming European Championships.
Okay.
Let's see. The events that are being played is the 3-comp. We have discussed that already. It's the elimination. We have talked about that as well. And then we are playing the base run in Swede format. And we have the triples. The triples that we played in Seinäjoki and in Worlds with 7 triples on 3 bases.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you like that?
I think it's a bit same that it is with base run, that the gameplay is so much focused on bases and so much focused on like the active play style, how you can duel it out in let's say tight spots, and how you can manage your idea of the surroundings well. So for me, I like it very much, and I think many others like it because it's a bit different from comp, and it's a bit different, a lot different from elimination. So it brings a new taste to the punch.
Yeah, I think it really the whole concept with this tournament with 4 formats. It really lets the zone system shine. It's a same format, same system, 4 completely different games.
Yeah, because if you you take competition format, it's not that much about, for some it might be, but it's not that much about how individual players move or make plays. But when you move on to elimination and triples, elimination is a lot about how you move from one spot to another and how you observe and use the possibilities for yourself. But when you move on to triples, it's about how you can keep consistently the aggressive play style and keep the area and keep your head on your shoulders, as the game pace is so fast that you have to constantly be aware of your small team and be aware how you move the small team to make every position and every situation shine for your team.
Yeah, that's one thing. I'm out of paper here. We're done with all that. Let's put it away. Something that we have to talk about. Just let me sit into the relaxed mode. It is the round robin or pool. What do you think?
Well, I see it from the point that, as I mentioned in the council discussion, it's a bit problematic when you pool people and you're trying to make some kind of interchange between the pools. Because if you take out the worst team from the pool number 1 from the top and change it with the best team from the pool number 2 from the bottom or so, you will have a problem because these pools will represent halves from the whole team scene, but also you are playing against the worst teams or you are playing against the best teams, and if you lose against the best teams, I think it doesn't equal that that it would be worse than playing winning against the worst teams. So I think the interchange between the pools is bad, but also from round robin, I like the idea that you would get the chance to play against each team. But after all, even that doesn't ensure that you get the even chance, because even if you're playing against each team once, I'm not sure if you're going to play it with the same setups.
That's true.
The same teams.
That's true. Okay, let's say I'm just how I'm thinking it. Now, Swedish Nats is a little bit too short to do this, but imagine if we have 15 teams.
Yep.
We do one round robin, and then we pool from that.
Yep.
And then we have a group stage within the pools. Because then you do play everyone, and then you play close games with teams that are close to you. So you get the training, you get to see the good teams, and and then you get to play a lot of games against your equals.
Yeah, I'd say that would be a good chance to have one round robin, then the pools, and the pools so that no team is changing between the pools. That the pools stay the same.
Yeah.
Because at that point you would first create pools that are somewhat close to the optimal, where the teams are ranked by the performance. But also if you think of the bottom part of the top team, top pool, and the top part of the bottom pool, there would be teams that have gained the position by winning, and they will keep on having that position because they have had a good performance. But it doesn't seal the deal for them so that they win or they lose. They will have the chance later on. But it will also make so that if you think we're moving on from the pools to the latter part, where every team has the possibility to rise up to finals, you would still have, in example, from the bottom pool, you would have the chance to have surprise tactics, in example, to rise up, because you haven't played against the top teams. So there could be a possibility for surprises even from there.
Yeah, and then we can promote winning, because then if you play against teams that are equal to you, you will get used to developing a winning tactic instead of this piggybacking that we see constantly throughout the round robin.
Yeah, and also that would put emphasis on that you have to win all the time, as you said, piggybacking, so that at every point, every round, you would have the need to win or to get to the top, because if you think of the round robin, you want to be on the top pool, because it would ensure that you start the dropouts from the top part, and also if you think of the pool, you would want to be on the top because you want to make sure that you are on the top of the pool when you come out.
Yeah.
And I think maybe from my perspective, you would want to have the first from the pool to go straight to the finals, because that would create the need to get first from the best pool, because then you would have proven twice that you are the best.
Yes,
and you don't have to prove it anymore.
Perfect.
Perfect for you.
No, it's just I like to see more of a winning culture among the mid cards, and teams they get used to playing for second, and then they once you reach system D, they have no chance.
Yeah, and I like the idea that everyone wants to win in the first place, but also that you don't lose the chance even if you lose a few times. And also that if in example, people have been talking about changing, as I said, changing from one pool to another. I think that wouldn't be a good choice, because you have proven in 1/3 of the competition that you're very good against all the teams. So why should you change to another pool because some team fares well against half of the teams when you have fared well against all of the teams? So there's no point in that.
Thank you, Vilpu.
Thank you, Moomin, and we will see you to the upcoming tournaments.
Yeah, I'll see you in Germany.
Okay, see you.
Okay, see you. So as you can tell, we are pretty close, Finland and Sweden. It's just some minor differences. I think we counted it. I think we have three differences. It's the one shot every 2 seconds on Elim, the 7-3 compared to our 6-3, and also what wasn't mentioned is that they use -40 hit you DAC and we use -50. Small difference. What I found most interesting now that I listen to this again while I'm doing sort of the edit is the pooling we talked about. Now after I've done all these interviews and talked to people, that is not really the perfect tournament. My new revised opinion is 1 round robin, 2 cascades, and then pooling. That would be the best. If you have a really long tournament, of course, you can have one round robin, 4 cascades, and then pooling. But then if you want to keep the points for pooling or start off clean sheet in the pools or whatever, well, that's not as important. But you do get the good games, which is very important to me at least. So, well, considering we play Finland all the time, there's not much for me to reflect upon. Hopefully it gave you more than it gave me, because I sort of already knew everything that we talked about. So the next interview I did was with Germany, and Germany is a little bit special, and the interview is really short. At the time I interviewed them, they had played the European format, I think 4 times, maybe 5, something like that. So when it came to settings, there wasn't much to be talked about really. So this is more of a cultural thing, just to check in and see how they do and what they sort of think of zone more than anything else. And just to give you a little background, they have a huge scene playing on the Venture system, which sort of resembles to our old V4 packs, but they use 3 shots per second, and that is not possible to change. So it's 3 shots per second, whatever you do, you can't change that. And they don't use any bases, and they only use 2 teams, not 3, because they don't have 3 colors simply. They have red and green. And the format is quite interesting. I actually went down there after the interview and I tried it. It's called the GLL, the German Lasertag League. Really well constructed league. Better than any European league in zone I've seen. I don't even think there is a league in Europe in zone. So yeah, well, that's sort of a given, but it's still very good. And it's basically you play on one side of the court, one team on one side and the other team on the other side, and the floor is striped, sort of like a zebra, you know, and you can move forward when you're alive, and if you die you have to back across one line, and once you cross the middle line, if you die you have to go all the way back to the middle. Sort of fun. Since I'm a duelist, it's not really super cool for me with 3 shots per second. That was actually quite bad. It was a great experience though, and the people were really nice, and the sort of V4 feeling was really there, and that was awesome. Actually, it was like the best experience for a very long time when it comes to packs. But so they only play with pack points, and the game is really fast, and a lot of running, a lot of injuries apparently, a lot of broken bones and stuff. They told me about their tournaments. So basically it's very, very different from at least the European settings, which does you need a good stamina, but that is basically because of the duels that you drop and you go high, you go low, you twist and you turn. There's nothing of that. It's just running forward all the time, forward. So that's just to give you a little insight. Okay, so the guy we're going to listen to is named Toby, and he plays in a team called the Hanau Watchdogs. Let's go. Okay, so I'm talking here with Toby from Germany, from Hanau, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and he is not a zone player actually. He plays on the Laser Venture, but he has joined us for some competitions around Europe, in Sweden and in Norway. Could you tell me a little bit about how the zone is in Germany at the moment?
The zone is kind of different than the way you play it in international. We have some sites in Germany, I guess about 17 sites in Germany, and there are also a lot of zone teams already, but they are not connected to each other since now.
Okay, so they play differently each site.
Yeah, they most of them only got some house team which used to train once in a week or once in a month, and they just join some tournaments when some tournaments are on some zone sites. So they travel around the country and looking for the tournaments who are gonna happen and try to join them.
So, because since we have the European Championships, I know you have a qualifier. So has a lot of zone teams joined in for that?
A couple. Last weekend happened the draft for the zone draft. So the 15 best of it will come to the end draft also in February, and then we will decide who will represent the Germany on the European Championships.
Oh, cool. And you also have your own league on your own system, on the Venture system.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I call it the German Lasertag League. Actually, we are in the 3rd season ever, so it's the 3rd year of the German Lasertag League. We are split it up in 3 leagues, like the first league, which is on the highest level, second league, a little bit lower, and the 3rd league, it's for the new teams who want to play in the league also.
Yeah, and for the record, you play in the highest league.
Yeah, I'm playing in the GLA 1, and actually we are on the 2nd place after the first game day.
That's nice. And how many teams in total?
We have 7 per league, so it's 21, but they can, during the season, more teams come to that because the 3rd league is something like you can hop in whenever you want to.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's a lot of teams for just 3 years.
Yeah, and we used to be some more, but some teams come, some will go. It's kind of a circle.
Yeah, that's true. So how many move up and how many fall down every year?
1 move up for sure, and the second is able to qualifier,
Yeah,
and
okay.
he plays against the second least of the higher one.
Yeah. I see. So you have been playing the international format on zone a few times. I don't know how many times you've been to France, you've been to Sweden, and you've been to Norway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you feel about the the European format? I have to say we don't play the international format. Maybe France did, but in Sweden and Norway we don't.
Well, actually, it was hard for me in the beginning to understand how I should move, and especially with the stunts. I'm used to use 3 shots per second in my league, so we shot very much,
Yeah.
and sometimes we shot without thinking about it.
Hmm.
And the thing is that you maybe have only one or two, no, only 1 shot per second or only a half shot per second.
Yeah.
It makes you play more carefully with your shots, you know.
Yeah.
You just shot when you need to,
Exactly.
and you think about more before you doing a shot, because 1 second can be a long time in such a fast game like this.
Yeah. So there has been some discussions that 1 shot per second makes the game slower and not as athletic. What would you say?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it makes the game slower, because you know when your enemy is missing the shot, you only have 1 second to get him.
Yeah.
Because after that he will be able to shot again. So I guess for the little movements it can make the game much quicker.
Okay. So moving along, you are sending a team to the European Championships, and are you in it?
In the German teams,
Yeah.
the championships, well, that will be decided on the 16th of February, because
Okay.
I also will join the end draft.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah,
So what do you
and
think?
when I don't know actually, because I'm not sure how the other some players in Germany are doing with the settings of the European Championships, because I know they used to play it kind of like us with more shots per second,
Hmm.
and not this modes, not this formats.
Yeah.
And now they have to train also this format, which I know pretty well because I have been in these countries and try to play and tried it.
Yeah.
So I will hope I will have a good chance, but I can't say it for sure right now because I don't know the other players.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, and I heard from Aki, who is in charge of this draft for the European Championships, that there's a lot of good players, and he's hoping for Germany to be able to send 2 teams, and that is a possibility. Actually, it's not at all impossible that Germany might be able to send 2 teams to the European Championships.
That would be great because we have a lot of people waiting.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people want to join the European Championship if they can afford it.
Mm.
So it would be nice when Germany got 2 spots.
So anyways, enough of the European Championship as an event, but I would like to talk a little bit about the different formats we play on the European Championships and what you think of them. We have the elimination with lives.
Yeah.
Do you play that in Germany?
Well, in the German Lasertag League, we also have 5 lives, but it's possible to recharge. You're not out of the game when you're out of your lives. You just need
Yes.
to go to recharge at your base, and then
Mm.
you can get back in.
It's the same in international Worlds format. They use the same, that you have to reload after 10 lives. In
Okay.
European Championships, we don't use reloads.
Okay, yeah, I saw.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of hard because you have to be very carefully how you move, and you need to know if it's good to get in this 101 or not, because when you're out of life, you're out of the game, and that's one of the worst thing that can happen for you and your team, because when you made for example, when you make good points in the game and then before the game ends you're out because you don't have any lives left, all of your points are nothing.
Yeah.
So this is kind of hard. You need to use your head all the time. You need to consider, can I afford it to go in this 101 again, because it's only 1 life left, and it makes the game a little bit more static. You
Yes.
know, you don't
Yes.
move that much, and that's why I don't prefer this as much as the other formats, because I like when it's fast and when the people are running, and
Yeah. Elimination is a little bit like either you love it or you hate it.
I think I, yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to comment on that. And then we have the regular one, the three comp. It's called, with the 3 teams. Every team has 1 base, and that is like the main event. How do you feel about that one?
It's one of the hardest tactical games you can play because you always have to look how the other teams are acting. You always have to um, think about your strategy when you see, okay, the teams are not acting like we expected they will do,
Mm.
you know.
Yes.
So I like this format very much, but it's hard to get in there when you're not used to play like this with 3 teams, because when our league we only have 1 team versus the other team, and the third team brings another character in the game.
So I'm actually curious about it, because you come from a background where you only play 2 teams against each other. You never play 3,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
never.
so the big question for you is, like, how do you feel about us having a main event on 3 teams instead of 2?
In the first, at the beginning, I didn't understand why. Because for me, sports was always one versus another. When you look at all the other kind of sports there are in the world, you will always find one versus another,
Hmm.
not 3 teams against each other like in soccer or basketball. But the way you play it, and when you understand what you need to consider in the game, I think it's pretty good, and I can totally understand why this is the main event.
Well, that's good to hear. Because it is actually something that we're often talking about, that it's weird that we use 3 teams, because inevitably one team will help the other team.
Well, when you don't when you're not used to it, it's kind of confusing
Mm.
in the beginning. But when you understand what is important in this game and what's not, then it's interesting.
Yeah, okay. And then we have something called base run. It's called base, and it's also called the Swedish format in the US, because it started in Stockholm, and it's
Okay.
2 teams of 3 against each other for 1 base.
Yeah, that's personally it's my favorite one.
Mm.
Because it's just base, base, base all the time. There's always action everywhere,
Yeah.
and it's fast, and I like it when I can destroy bases. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You get your kicks from it.
yeah, kind of. Yeah,
Yeah, and that would sort of go back to the 1 team against 1 team as well. But if we look at these 3 formats, you have the base run, the 3 comp, and the elimination. How do you think the Germans will do? Which event will be the strongest one?
for real. I don't really know the team yet because the team is not decided
No.
from now on, and I don't can compare our German players with you because I never played with a German team against some foreign team, you know.
Hmm.
So I don't know where we are right now, but I guess when we consider that we still already begun to play zone like you do,
Yeah.
I guess we will be kind of not on the top 3.
No.
Would be nice
Probably
to
not.
be.
No.
Yeah, and it will be hard for us to improve ourselves, but we will try our best to win maybe one or 2 games.
Yeah.
And if we would win a format, it would be the best thing ever can happen for the Germans. So
So which one of these 3 do you think you will rank highest in?
me personally or
Not the team,
German?
Germans in general, because you
Mhm.
you are Lasertag players. You have played
Yeah,
Lasertag for a few years. I mean, 3 years, right, or more?
yeah, 3
Yeah.
years.
Yes. So there are some basic skills in you already.
Yeah, but it's also kind of different when the pack is different. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah. That's true. That's
um
true.
I would say because we are used to one team versus one team, we will at base run. You can be good.
Yeah, and you did
I
very
hope.
well in Gothenburg, if I remember correctly. It wasn't you, it was Palme and Aki, I think. They were in the final on the draft.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, you weren't in the final.
We won team elimination. I won this with my team,
Yeah.
so it was kind of surprising for
Yes.
me.
Yeah, we were in the same team, I think. Or?
Nah, it was the second day, I guess.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Usually elimination is one of those formats where players from other systems do pretty well because it's slower, so you don't have to duel, or you can take your time, when you wake up and stuff like that. You can use
Yeah.
formations like other systems.
But if your enemies are pushing, it's hard
That's true.
when you're new and don't used to the timing. It's hard to win a 1-on-1.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So what's good news for you is that in European Championships there's 4 teams on the field.
Oh.
So yeah. So then one team
can
can't
always
push you.
care about each other, and yeah.
Yeah. So then one team can't push you too much, right? Because they will be eliminated as well.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, thank you, Toby. And I will see you in. Are you going to Rovaniemi?
When is it?
That's in April, and you are signed. I checked the event. You are signed up for it.
Yeah, Aki does my kind of calendar. He's kind of my organizer.
Okay, so
He's just texting me a message, hey, we will see us there. Now we're like, okay, I'll go there.
So he's making most decisions.
Yeah, kind of. And I don't even know about some like this.
Yeah, it's good that you trust him, though.
Yeah, but he has to consider that my bank account got a limit,
Ah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's worth going because it's the only tournament on Nexus this year. So if you do enjoy Nexus, then you should go.
It's a Helios year.
Yeah, it's very much so. Next year will probably be 2019. I hope will be more of a Nexus year because I think Belfort is having a tournament and Gothenburg is having a tournament. So that's two Nexus tournament at least.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you, Toby.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I'll see you.
Yo, bye.
Bye. And so now afterwards I can tell you that Toby did make the cut and he is in the European Championships. He's playing in one of the German teams. And Germany is really, really expanding when it comes to zone. Like, they are coming to Swedish Nationals with 3 teams, and that is really strong. Bringing 3 teams to Swedish Nationals when you've only played zone for such a short time, it's really impressive. I think Germany will be a force to reckon with in time. They need to learn still, but it's just a question of time. And maybe not so much of a reflection to do here, but it's interesting to see how they sort of view the zone. It was a lot of emphasis on elimination. It's because they played in Norway, they played in Sweden, and we play a tremendous amount of elimination, so it's sort of the format they have been playing the most probably by the time I did this interview, because that's what we play. So that's why there was so much talk about elimination. But Germany, actually, they went to a Finnish competition, the Finnish qualifier. They were allowed in as guests, and everyone thought like they would be dead last because they haven't been playing so much, but they didn't. They came second to last, but still, in a Finnish qualifier, that's pretty good because you have to acknowledge that it's not a lot of like weaker cards. Like, it's good players because everyone who comes there has sort of a thought to it that we can probably make the cut and move to the European Championships, and to finish second to last there is pretty good. Anyway, enough of Germany. Let's move on to France. Now, France is really special because they actually also have a huge local scene, but in difference from Germany, this one is zone-based. They have this league called Leo, which is actually, in difference from what I said earlier, a Lasertag league on zone in Europe. Still, I think GLL is bigger than Leo, but still. And they only play one format, what's called the French format around the world. I'm not sure what they call their format, maybe just Lasertag, since they only have one, I'm not sure. And that one is built on bases only. You have one team defending and one team attacking. Pack points are 0, so you can't score anything from packs. The defending teams does not follow any base evac. They can stay inside the base at all times. The attacking team has to evac when they die. And they use 4 shots per second. And they use no stuns. So bringing all this together gives you a really high-paced game. We tried it at Worlds, but since we had never played it before, and since it was a little bit tweaked compared to how they played in France, it was sort of, to the French players, it wasn't really the French format, and to the World's players it was so new and such a short time that besides GP, it wasn't really appreciated. Unfortunately, I'm sure if we would have played it with Leo on a Leo tournament, things would have been very different. But now, no, it didn't really fly. However, I have to say that GP afterwards said it was really cool and had a lot of potential, so I'll say that. I'll also say that they were the only ones who said it, but still, they were the only ones who really went for it. They won in the end. Finals was between GP and GP because they split up with the tournament, so it was actually 2 GP teams in the finals, which is pretty cool. So for this interview, I'm talking to Florian from the Belfort Lions, and the Belfort Lions is the only solid team in France that play zone in international format and European format. So they do send more teams to the European Championships. They're sending 3, but the Lions are the only one that remains the same. They are also the ones that practice on a regular basis, so they are like the team of France. In Worlds, they placed highest of all the French teams participating. So let's run the interview. So I'm sitting here in an interview with Zed Fox, whose name is Florian, and he plays with the Belfort Lions. Hello.
Hey, Moomin.
Hey. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the situation for zone in France and how you play it. So how would you say the situation is right now for zone in France?
For all the championships in France?
Yes, the different play styles. And
it's really, really different than the international modes. There is only one mode in France, I know. So with Leo. I didn't play the other modes we got in France. There is a game mode for Megazone zone. There is one for Laser Quest, etc. So I only played the format we play with Leo, so with Megazone, and yeah, it's really, really, really different than the international. Not the how to say.
Yes, and Leo, that's an organization, right?
Yeah.
It's played as a league.
Yeah.
Yes. From we can have in a championship, we can have two league, because of the number of the team. Uh, if we got like 22 teams, we have to make two leagues because of the time of championship. If we have to meet everyone, it could take
Very long.
yeah, it could be very long. So it depends of the number of the team who comes, but most of the time it's in two league, and we earn points at the end of the championship, and it's like we're making a ranking at the end of the year, and so you can see at the end of the year if you can go to the first league, if you downgrade to the second league,
Yeah.
etc.
Okay. And how many times do you play it? The league?
I
Per year?
played for like 5 years in this game mode with
Yeah.
the Leo.
Okay, I see. And you meet 4 times every year, somewhere in France, right?
Yeah.
I see. And the format, because the format has been played in Worlds, it was played in Belfort. Now the way we played it in Worlds, is that exactly the way that you play it when you play it in Leo?
It was exactly the same, just a little different. We did for the how to say the cover. We used the international, but in France we have to have the gun. We cannot. How to say it?
Yeah, it has to be upright.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we cannot change. We cannot.
No, that's why
it,
you always
it,
go from left to right.
it has to be always in the same position. If you when you shoot, etc. This is the difference. This is the thing we didn't use in World, and we used the international cover for. And so not only for the gun, for the back, we use the international cover. But for it's a gun, the most important thing we change.
I see. So did that affect much?
Not really. In my opinion, because we trained the international mode. Yep. We played for 5 years with the French cover, and we didn't have so much difficulties to change it and to cover like the international asked us to cover. So
yeah, I see. Okay, so that's a little bit about Leo, and you have started playing with the international settings since how long?
We played with international settings 1 year before the Worlds.
Okay.
Yeah, approximately.
Okay. So how many teams in France do you have right now that plays on international settings?
I think 2, 3. I don't know exactly.
I see.
People are training in their cities, so we don't see them every day. But yeah, I think so. We Belfort Lions train with international settings now. I think yes, 1 or 2 teams continue to use these settings.
Okay, I see. So when we say international settings, it can mean a lot of things. That's why I talk to everyone from every country, because when we say international settings, everyone is referring to something different. So when you play, do you use the same settings as Worlds?
Yes, exactly the same. We on the PC, we we kept exactly the same settings.
Okay.
We use the mods who have been created on our PC for the worlds.
Okay, that's good. So now that the European Championships is getting closer, the settings are a little bit different. Have you tried those?
For I didn't understand. Sorry.
Oh, the way that we'll be playing in European Championships. Have you tried those settings?
Yeah, we tried it. It's again different than the French format and than the international mode. For example, no reload, the main comp, etc. It's not really the same. So
No.
again,
no,
another
different.
a game again over game modes we have to learn.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah. So if you compare those two, what would be the good things with Worlds and the good things with European Championships?
The thing I found which is really different, it's the no reload. I think it changed the game. It's really hard since the beginnings. You don't stop. You attack. You're attacking. You're defending. Every second of the game. Yeah, I think it changed a lot. Reloads, you have to go far. Sometimes far in the maze. You lose time to go to reload. This is really different. You're always near the base. You try to always have information on enemies. And with reloads, sometimes you have to go far off your base or your teammate. You cannot see everything, etc.
Yeah.
I think the big point is the no reload in this championship.
I see. And what do you think about no reloads on a personal note? Better or worse?
I think it's a good thing. It's more intense. As I said, you're every second you're how to say it. You're fighting every second. So
yeah, it's non-stop action.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I see. So as a team, Belfort Lions, you haven't been traveling much since Belfort.
Yeah. We didn't travel since the world.
No, well, you didn't travel then. Sorry, you just stayed at home.
Yeah, the German team comes to see us, comes to see the maze of the world, and they come to learn the international modes and the European modes. So it was really good.
Yeah, they told me it was very nice, and they said they would be coming there a lot.
Yeah.
And we also talked a little bit about trying to host a tournament there next year. It's January now, so it's pretty far away. But I'm just thinking that. Do you think that you will start traveling a little bit? Because playing international tournaments, you learn a lot.
We will try, but the distance we have to make for a championship is really important for us because with Tayo, the overflorian of Belfort Lions, we are working in the center, and we can't let our the people who work with us so much time.
I see.
A long time solo.
I understand.
Yeah, working in Megazone, it's really you can do it. You can't do what you do with tournaments, etc. So we have David who wants to move on with us on tournaments. So we are also 3 people who are working in the center who have to live at every tournament. So
Nice.
we leave only 2 people working,
It's maybe.
and it yeah, and it can be very very difficult for them. So yeah, we will. So for European Championship, we will try to. They will have someone to help them, so everyone can come.
Okay.
But because we are 2 and so 3 with David working in the center, it can be
Very
it can be hard
to get away. I understand.
to move like we want.
Yeah. Okay. So since Worlds, now I get an echo here. I can hear myself in your phone. Do you have me on speaker?
No.
Okay, that's weird. Okay. Anyways, so since Worlds, have you gotten any new members?
Not really. We see 2 or 3 people who comes to play in the center. They are really good. We will try to make them play international mode to see if they want to play it, if they like it. So maybe we will have more members for international mode, for training, etc. We are working on it to have more people to train with us and to make them discover the international modes.
That's cool. So getting back to the European Championships here, there will be, how many formats is there? 1, 2, 3. There will be 4 main formats, I think. It's the 3 comp, the main event, the elimination, the triples that we played in Worlds.
Yeah.
And besides that, there will be the base run. Have you tried base run?
Yes, we tried a few times because of the end of the year with Christmas, etc. We didn't train a lot last month, but we tried the base run, and it's again really different. And I found it very, very fun. It's different, so yeah.
It actually reminds a little bit about the French format with 2 teams on 1 base.
I didn't understand. Sorry.
The base run.
Yeah.
Is a little bit like the French format with 1 base and 3 people. It's just no one defends. Everyone is attacking, but.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it is a good format because you don't have to be so many players. With 6 players, you can play it.
Yeah.
So, how do you find? There's something I'm always asking in new countries: the elimination format. What do you think about that one?
For my first experience with this in Worlds, personally, I didn't really like it. I don't know how to explain it. It's not a game mode I always play. It's really, really different. We didn't really train on it. Strategies are very, very different than other game modes. So it was a little bit hard for us because we didn't train a lot with on this. We didn't have many training with other French teams. We are always 6 for training, so it was easy for the main comp, etc. We can train some situation of the game modes, but for team elimination, it was really hard to train it. So I didn't like it. I don't know the other of the teams, but
from what I heard, it wasn't very popular. Yeah, and that's actually I got the same comments from Germany and Norway as well. So you're in good company.
Okay.
Yeah. So team elimination is very much appreciated in some countries, and in some countries is not. That's the conclusion.
It's very, very special. I think with with some people who really like it and who can really explain us some strategies, etc. I think I can change my opinion of it. But with the training we got on this, I wasn't really good in this. So yeah, it was not my best, my favorite game mode in words.
Yeah, I understand. So if we go to the main event, the 3 comp, we already talked about the no reloads and everything. But I was just thinking it's always interesting to ask you who haven't been playing it for long. Our main event, like the big event, is with 3 teams. And what do you think about that, having 3 teams in the main event?
It's I think it's good. It's like I said, another changing, like few settings like this is changing sometimes completely the game mode. It's really different and still be a good format. I like to train on it, and I how to say it. I really want to play it in European. I want to be I want to play it to see, so with other countries, other people, etc. To play it not only with my teammates, to see how it's with other people, because of our training with 6 people. So yeah, I really want to play it in Europe and to see it, to how different it is, and yeah, I think it could be a good game.
Yeah.
Good game.
I see. So I'm just gonna rephrase. I think we missed each other a little bit. The main event is with 3 teams. Usually, if you play football or basketball, whatever, it's always 2 teams against each other.
Yeah.
But we play with 3. Do you think it's weird using 3 teams in the same game?
Not really. It's different, and I think it's good. We, as you said, on other sports, etc., it's always 2 teams, and changing this can change everything. So I would say it. Yeah, we don't see this in every sports, and I think it's good to have 3 teams, to not only 2 who are playing in their in a, I would say in a corner of the maze. It can be, you can have people everywhere. You don't have only one team. You don't have only a few people to see. You are fighting against a team. The other comes backward, etc. It changes everything. You can be surprised in game to see them coming. As I said, you're fighting. Someone is coming backward, etc.
Exactly.
It's not the same team, etc. It's
it changes all the time. It's very dynamic.
Yeah.
I see. So lastly, I would just like to ask you about how do you think your chances are in the European Championships?
We learned a lot from the Worlds, so I think we can. I hope we can surprise other people of how we play now. In not like in the beginning of the world, we were really beginners in the international modes. So I hope we learned a lot of this year before the Worlds, like when we train, and for this year since the World we train. I hope we learned more than we learn in the Worlds, and I hope we can do something. We will not be in the top of the ranking, but yeah, at the World, we hope to beat some teams and not be the last, and yeah, at least beat some teams and do our best.
Yeah. Okay. So I was thinking France, you have 3 spots for the European Championships. Do you think you will send 3 teams?
I hope. We got 2 teams. We are. I think we are sure we are coming with 2 teams. We will try to have a 3rd team. It could be really good to send more French to international modes, European mode, etc. To help the other French player to discover this, and it's a really good experience. So yeah, we are trying to come with more French on every tournament. So yeah, we got 4 teams in France in Worlds. I hope we can have at least 3 teams in Europeans.
Okay. Besides the Belfort Lions, any of the other teams joining in, as they were, like Specta Team or Dabeu or French Touch?
The second team, which is normally coming, is made with some people of these 3 teams. So they are doing another team for the European Championship. So yeah, normally we will have a second team with people from the 3 teams of France, and I hope with the other player we can do a 3rd team.
Yeah, let's hope for that. Okay then. Thank you, Florian.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I'll see you in Helsinki.
Yeah, see you.
Take care, man.
You too.
Yeah, bye. After talking to Florian, while sitting here editing, I can tell you that the Belfort Lions are coming to European Championships, as I said, and also the Leo is sending a team, which is pretty cool. They are showing that they are open-minded and wanting to try. It's really nice. How they'll do, I don't know. If they'll enjoy it, I hope so. Maybe someday we can play with them, but it's hard because they are sort of, you have to play a lot to sort of play the top teams. You will have, since it's a league, you have to start low and all that, which makes guest appearances really hard. But someday I hope to play with Leo, to try it. It's a big league and they deserve some sort of recognition for that. Anyway, so what's interesting from this interview is probably their transition from the World's format to the European format and their thoughts about that. However, this is also a young country, so they don't have really much frame of reference as it is now. I'm sure that will change in time, and hopefully we'll be back in Belfort next year to play another tournament, and that would be really nice. Okay then, so now I've been talking to all the European countries. Well, not all, has to be said. I did not talk to Russia, I did not talk to Norway, and I guess they could give sort of an input, but on the other hand I can't talk to every nation, unfortunately. That would be a lot of interviews, and the podcast would be really, really long. But we are seeing, I should mention that we are seeing, like, Norway is back in Swedish Nationals. They haven't been playing Swedish Nationals for, 10 years maybe. And also Russia is not coming to the European Championships, unfortunately, but we have seen them in the Finnish nationals 2 years straight, I think. And they also send players from time to time. We had Maria playing with the name Alice in Frankfurt when I was there playing, and she also came to Gothenburg playing with us here, so there's something going on there. It's just that they are playing QSAR. They don't have much zone in Russia, particularly around the Moscow area, from what I understand. I've never been there, so I shouldn't say too much, but that's what I heard. Okay then, so what we're going to do now is move outside of Europe, which is sort of interesting to me, at least when I sort of did it, because I haven't been to America, I haven't been to Australia. Well, I've been to America, I just haven't played zone in America. But this is sort of where we ended up, where I wasn't sure myself on what the reactions would be. Usually when you talk to the Europeans, we know each other, we know why they have made the decisions they have, and they know why we play the way we do, and we sort of, there's a lot of things that goes unspoken when we talk to each other. I realized that afterwards. Whilst when I talk to America, I mean, that's really different. They do play the Worlds format, which is a format that is generally pretty disliked by Swedes. And I was really keen on seeing, what they would say about their own format and how they could possibly sort of defend their way of playing. Now afterwards, I realized that was a stupid thing to think. So I got a hold on a guy called Luke, who's playing in RSD. He's really active. He works in Fort Wayne, a site there. And I've never met the guy, and he has never met me, obviously. So this was pretty interesting. So, yeah, let's just cut to the chase. Let's hear it. Okay, so I'm sitting here interviewing Luke from the US, from Fort Wayne, team RSD.
Yes.
Okay, could you tell me a little bit about your team?
Well, originally I was not on the team when they first formed. I can't tell you exactly who was, except for like the main players were Dot, Ace, and Sentox. They picked me up to go to nationals back in 2009, and we ended up taking first place at my first ever tournament.
That's cool. And from what I understand, Ace and Dot is also part of Legends, or?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so Legends is more of an like all-star team, or?
I think it's more of like a combined star players from each site. People who have been around a long time, and then like Pun and Slick and Assassin and Trigga. Those people are all, more like your Legend all-star players because they've been around for so long, and they're all real good players from their respected location.
The talk is that Legends is no longer playing, is it so?
I would say they're no longer playing as a team right now. It's hard to coordinate in the U.S. To get everyone together, especially with people being on the West Coast and then others being on the East Coast. But I don't think that they're done playing as individuals. I think that there's always a good opportunity for people to get back together and travel again.
Okay, could you tell me a little bit about the scene in the U.S. at the moment?
Currently this year, we have 3 tournaments scheduled, one in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and that's Battle for the Fort. It's looking like we're going to have 7 to 9 teams attending, and they're 5-man, 2-alt. And we're going to be having another tournament in June at Philly's location, Bensalem, Pennsylvania, and that's called Philly Invites. And then the last tournament we're having is Nationals, and that'll be sometime in September, August area. I believe I confirmed that it's at Bailey's Crossroads near DC in the U.S.
That's cool. And all these 3, are they annual tournaments?
Nationals is kind of like hit or miss. It's if someone wants to host it. So we had Nationals last year at Philly, which was supposed to be Philly Invites, so we kind of combined the 2 into a national tournament. Battle for the Fort is one that we try and have every year, but we missed 1 year last year. We're trying to get back on track this year and get more teams to come out here and attend. So we're actually going all the way back to Nexus to try and get more teams to attend, just for that old-fashioned feel. And Philly invites is pretty much every year. That is a guaranteed annual tournament that usually will always happen.
The Philly invites is almost like the nationals in terms of prestige.
Yeah, I would say so, because everyone likes to attend that location. I mean, it's a lot of fun, but it is nice to be able to do a nationals tournament at a different location from year to year.
Okay, talking nationals and talking settings, I have been talking to all the European countries, looking at the world settings and comparing it to each national settings that are used among the bigger nations, so to speak. But in the US, you are sort of playing with the world's format already. What do you think is the best with 8.4?
Well, what I think about 8.4 being the best is, I feel like it gives you a little bit more of an opportunity if you're trying to get a base and you shoot somebody, and then 2 seconds passes by, you still have a chance to get that base. Now, if it's on a setting where it's 6-3 or something like that, and you shoot somebody and it still takes you 2 seconds to get inside that base, now, it's a little tougher, because there's probably not just going to be one person that you've shot on the 6-3 game for, or on the game setting. So it's going to be a little bit tougher to get that base, even if you have backup, just because people are going to be coming on a lot faster. So I think I personally like the 8.4 the best, just because it gives you more time to accomplish what you need to accomplish.
Okay, then that was the 8.4. And then regarding the reloads, people who are not using reloads are really trashing it at the moment. So I'm curious, like, what is the good thing with reloads?
Well, I think that if you're not using reloads, you're playing the game wrong, in my opinion, personally. Just because if you can stay in a base and all day long and just shoot people out, two good players in a base. I mean, I've never played. I think I've played against some of the GP players, and I hear GP. They're real good. So I just want to say, if you get two really good GP players or two really good legend players, in a base that are just monsters on base defense, and they can sit in that base all day long shooting people out with no regard to losing ammo or losing a certain amount of like power to have to leave that base and eventually go reload. I feel like that's kind of taking away from the game in a sense, because you want people to have to have that aspect of, well, shoot, I only got like 3 or 4 shots left, I need to rotate out, we need the offense to come back. It brings a new type of play into the game, whereas if you're not playing with that, then you don't really have to worry about your offense ever coming back to rotate out, besides forgetting your bases. If you have 2 monsters in a base, they don't need to get their bases to win. If no one's got your base, I feel like you've already won.
That's true. So you think like the shots are more important than the lives?
In a sense, yeah, because if we're talking about base defense, and like I say, if there's 2 monsters in a base and they don't have if they have unlimited ammo, they're just going to sit in there all day long, especially if we're talking about, I'm skipping ahead here a little bit, but if we're talking about handholds, where it's different in Europe as opposed to in America, where you can cover up that sensor, in a sense, if you're playing on Helios Pro, you could easily sit in a base all day long and just shoot shots, just picking people, as they're coming in. Whereas if you have a limited amount of ammo, you have to reserve a little bit, and it makes you rely on your offense a little bit more in a defensive aspect.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if we're talking lives, in what sense is that important to the game?
Well, if you have your offense out there constantly, just able to just sit outside of a base, just constantly trying to crack over and over and again until they get it, they might get pushed back out. They can easily just stay there and keep cracking the base over and over again and not have to worry about going to reload. Whereas, if you have the reloads on, now they have to walk away from that base. They might get picked off. It changes the game a little bit in that aspect. Whereas also the offense can take this advantage now. They know they're about to be out of lives. Why not regroup, switch it up, move from base back to defense, see how the defense is doing, reload as you're there. I think it brings more. I think reloads bring more teamwork together, honestly, because you have to coordinate a lot more. And if you're a solo player and you have to reload and you're playing multi-level system, so if you're upstairs and you don't have to worry if you get shot upstairs over and over again, you don't have a limited amount of lives, you're just going to stay up there all day because you're going to have more ammo than you do lives. So you could probably shoot a lot more people before you run out of lives, you know?
Okay. I suppose it comes down to the arena a little bit.
Yeah, I think so in some aspects, yeah, because some places play downstairs only, or maybe there is no upstairs at all. You know, there's a little bit more to do if you have an upstairs, definitely. I think lives definitely are a huge factor because I can't tell you how many times at this past national tournament I saw people that were off because they ran out of lives and they didn't come back on for a whole minute, you know. And I mean, you think it's a 12-minute game now. You take a whole minute of getting points away from you and your team, you might have lost 1,000 points at that point, you know?
Yeah.
Which could be a game changer right there, you know? That in some cases, if someone got a tick, they might lose just by that tick.
Yeah, and speaking of the length of the game, you used the 12-minute games?
That's what I'm used to, yes.
Yeah. What do you think is the benefit of using 12 minutes?
Well, I think the benefit is it gives each team an opportunity to rotate each base that they need and get it done within the allotted time. Now, if you have 10 minutes on, say, a 7-man team, now you're pushing it. You know, it's going to be pretty hard to get each person their base, especially when another team is really good on base defense. So it kind of changes the game a little bit. Whereas now you're more concerned about defense than you are offense in an aspect that you don't want anyone to get your base. That should be the case all the time, but now it matters more so because you have less time. So if an entire team gets your base and you have not gotten the entire team's base as well, you don't have as much time. So you're really, really struggling here. And I think it is beneficial to lower the game time, the less players you have. I can agree with that, definitely.
Yeah. And also the hand sensor. You are using the hand sensor, and
yeah, we are.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I feel that having to use the hand sensor makes it so that you have to hold the phaser in a certain way where some things can't be accomplished if you don't have the hand sensor on. So what I mean by that is if somebody's really good at flip shots and they don't have to use the hand sensor, they're going to be even better. They're just, now you don't even have to keep your hand on that sensor. So whereas before it makes it a little bit harder for that player to shoot somebody doing a flip shot. If I'm holding the laser and I'm shooting someone on my left and someone comes up on my right, I can easily flip that phaser and shoot them without ever taking my thumb off the hand sensor. So whereas other players I mean, if you guys aren't using the hand sensor over there, I feel like I've never done that before. So I don't even know how, I might be better at it. You know, I really don't know. I can't say what the benefit of not using it is, but the benefit of using it is it makes players have to always keep their hand on that specific spot in order to shoot somebody. So I'd say that's the benefit of it is.
We were talking a little bit about the 8-4.
Yeah.
And regarding the 4-second stun.
Yeah.
We have been discussing a lot in Sweden and also a little bit in Finland that, okay, we want to play Worlds on 8 seconds because Australia and New Zealand wants to do that as well. So 8 is sort of cemented. But we're saying that 4 should be changed to 3 because otherwise the point of the stun is sort of lost because it's so hard to dodge out for 4 seconds instead of 3.
Yeah. I can agree with you on that. It is very hard to do so. I feel like at least, though, if you have the 4 seconds, you can dodge out of 1. You might be able to dodge out of 2. But at that point, you're already a distraction in a way. I feel like the point of stuns, in my opinion, personally, I don't feel like it's meant for you to be able to come out of the stun. If you do, that is applaud worthy, especially if it's 4-second stun. I feel like it's more so a distraction to someone, say, in a base where their teammate can come in and shoot that person because they're distracted by the stun player, you know, their eyes are taken off. You know, I feel like it's more of a distraction factor more than it is like, hey, you know, we need to set it up at 3 so that I have the chance to come out of the stun and shoot the player, you know. But I mean, I wouldn't ever want to make the decision in a world format on whether we should change it to 4 or 3 because I feel like no matter what you do, you're gonna piss someone off, know?
Yeah, that's why I'm doing this this interview. It's just to It's just because everyone is playing differently and everyone has a really good
Yeah.
explanation to why.
Yeah, and if someone says the opposite of what I just said, then that's because that's what they want to do. They want to be able to come out of that stun and shoot that player that stunned them, which is completely fine. I love doing that, and I can do it on a 4-second. It's harder, yeah, because there's an extra second. But I feel like if you're a team player, you're more so looking to distract that player with that stun. So you don't necessarily need to come out. So I feel like 4 is okay if you kept it at 4. But if you change it to 3, it does give people the opportunity to actually come out of that stun a little bit more. You have a higher probability of coming out of the stun and shooting the player that stunned you.
Yeah, makes sense. I would like to talk a little bit about the travel bit. We don't
Yes.
see a lot of the American teams in Europe. I know Legends has been to Australia playing Nats. So in general, American teams are on the road mainly for Worlds. Well, at least that's my perception. Could you talk a little bit about that?
From what I understand, it's very hard for an American team to get together and make it worth their while to go overseas. So, by that, what I mean is, if you have a full-time job in the U.S., you get 1, maybe 2 weeks of vacation that's paid. And if you've already used it for personal things in your life or, family events, you don't have very much time to take and go overseas with. So if you're going to use all that time just for a tournament, you better make it worth your while to go to that tournament. You're going to want a team that's going to win, or have a chance of placing, in some events. You don't want to just grab some people that are like, hey, I just want to go, because I've never been. You want to make sure that your team is up to par and that you guys are going to play well and communicate well together. So I feel like it's harder for the U.S. to do that with players being on the East Coast and then a lot in the Midwest. And then we're split up so far, and then on the West Coast, we're split up so far with the people that want to go. It's very, very hard for us to communicate and get a team to go. So it was very nice being able to see Legends go to Australia a few years back and win as much as they did. Like, that was awesome for the U.S. to be able to do that. And now we're waiting for an opportunity for the same amount of players with the same skill set to be able to go again. That would be nice.
The elimination. You use 3 teams on Elim?
I think that's all we do. Usually is 3 teams. I'm trying to remember if we've ever put more than 3 in a game.
Yeah.
I think we might have put 4 in a game. I think what we do, I think we have done 4 in the past, and what we do is we don't play with the full, like, say we're playing a 6-man tournament. I think we play with 5-man elim. Like, we'll drop 1 man off and make it 5-man.
Yeah, okay. Because now when we played Worlds, it was 3 teams anyways. Okay. And it was a lot of discussions afterwards, like why would you use 3 teams in elimination? But could you talk a little bit about why you use 3 teams when you play elimination?
I think it's the whole aspect of if you have an arena that's set up for 3 bases already, you have 3 focal points in that arena, and maybe one focal point in that arena might be screwed because it might be in the center of the arena and not like in a corner, like for instance Battle for the Fort Wayne site. The blue base that's a focal point, the blue section, but it's in the center of the arena, and red and green are in the corners of the arena. Now, if we talk about Philly's location, 3 teams for elim, that works out fine because you have red base in one corner, a blue base in another corner, and since the arena is like an L shape, the other base is in the 3rd corner. So it works perfect because you have 3 focal points separating the 3 teams. So you can play Eliminator with 3 teams there just fine. I think that is another issue to do with the arena composition. So I feel like 4 teams would be really good, and 2 teams would be really good in like a box-shaped arena because you can split them up in each corner or on each side if you just do 2, and then you kind of work your way at each other. But I feel like if you do an even amount, you're going to have a lot more stalemates, whereas if you do a 3-team eliminator, one team is probably going to be the team that's stuck in the middle of the other 2, and then they're usually, what a lot of teams like to do is they push one team into the other and then what happens is the other team eliminates them, but they've lost lives in the process. So now the team that pushed the other team into that third team, they have more lives than that third team that just eliminated the other one. So now they can push without worrying at all into that third team and eliminate them after they had just done the job for them eliminating the other team. Does that make sense? Like, that's a lot of people like the aspect of being able to kind of screw over one team and use that to their advantage by essentially saving their lives and pushing that third team that's now left in the arena.
Yeah, it does make sense. Okay, thank you, Luke.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah. So after I talked to Luke, then that was when I realized there is no real correct way of playing zone. Everything that we as Swedes really dislike, such as 8-4, 12-minute games, reloads, it was sort of, Luke could give an explanation for all of the settings, why they play it. And now I think the interview was maybe 30 minutes once I edited it. We talked for 2 hours, something like that. And in the end, we sort of came to an understanding that, okay, if your arena would look like ours and our arena would look like yours, we would probably end up, just switching settings with each other more or less, besides the things that stick because of tradition. So yeah, this was really an eye-opener for me talking to Luke here. A great guy. And I will be playing, I'm not sure, I might be playing with him in the US Nats. I'm not really sure. Todd is setting me up with a team in Bailey's, and I'm not really sure who I'm playing with, but I think Luke might just be one of them. Okay. So, for example, something that I really have reflected upon is the bases. Like when he said, like, if you have 2 strong players inside the base, they can stand there all day. Without reloads, the game would be more or less stupid, unplayable, sort of. I haven't been there, I don't know, maybe he's exaggerating, I don't know. But for the sake of argument, let's say that's the case. And if you compare it to the bases we use in Sweden, I mean, when we play like the toughest resistance, that would be GP. Last time they were there, they were in Gothenburg. It was last year, and they were there the year before, 2016. In 2016, they came full force and they beat us. We lost by 20k in the finals, I think. And the year after, they came with sort of a light edition. Dark Omen injured, Yor was not on the team, Kutama was not on the team. So then we won with 20k something. Anyway, when we were playing and you were in the base defending and you had GP attacking, or a team like equal to GP or close to, if you can stay in the base as a defender for more than, I don't know, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and you have, like, let's say you have 3 defenders and they have 3 people attacking you, or 2 players and 1 player from another team, regardless, if you stay in our base for longer than 15 seconds, then you're good, you're really good. So I suppose there's a difference. So the next person I talked to was Jono from Cobras, called Moldy when he plays. He's representing New Zealand, and New Zealand is very special because their native format sort of is the Australian setting, because they play the Aussie Nats, or Oceanic Championship. I would call it Aussie Nats. I'm not really sure if it's the Oceanic Championships or whatever it's supposed to be. I'll say Aussie Nats. So anyway, that's their home format, but for Worlds, they practiced for a very long time to get very proficient at the world settings, And when they came to Worlds, they really caused like an upset because they were really, really good. Sort of like, yeah, well, they did come second, so I'd say it's on world settings they are probably top 4 team in the world right now. So I figured like they will have a lot of input to comparing Australian settings with world settings, and they did. You will hear later. Problem is they still haven't played the European settings, which I sort of enjoy most, of course, since I'm European, but it's still interesting to listen to Jono comparing Australian settings and world settings. So let's hear this. So I'm in an interview with Jono from Cobras, New Zealand. Hello, Jono.
Hey.
Also playing with the nickname Moldy, I think, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So could you tell me a little bit about your team, the Cobras?
So we formed in 2014 for the 2014 Australasian Championship that was held in New Zealand. So myself and 4 other members at the time, who were all related to each other. We came 4th in that tournament, and we played with the same lineup for a couple more years, coming second in the following 2 tournaments. After that, we changed our lineup a bit to add a bit of new blood to the scene, also because a few of us couldn't make the 2017 tournament. Following that, we formed a new set of 5 for the World Tournament, and played there last year, coming second.
Yeah, okay. And you just played a tournament in Australia that you won.
Yeah, that's right. The pre-nats. It's we haven't won a tournament since a Brisbane pre-nats a couple of years ago, actually. So it was quite nice to win something again.
Yeah, congratulations. So,
yeah, cheers.
What is a pre-nat?
So in the lead up to any nationals tournament, or it's Australasian titles. It used to be nationals, now it's that, but we still call it pre-nats. We have generally 2 to 3 competitions at the host site for the upcoming tournament, and it's a really good way for teams to learn the arena, well in advance of the main tournament. It kind of levels the playing field against the home teams, where you're not always going to have a strong home team, but when you do, as in the case of say any Queensland team, to be able to figure out some of their mates before you go really helps you to not get destroyed, especially in the early parts of the tournament. It's also the only kind of like big tournaments we have like on a national scale apart from the main event, right? We don't have so many tournaments every year. We have smaller state comps, but they're not really the same, so it's a good chance to socialize as well.
Oh, I see. So it has no like it's not a qualifier or anything like that?
At this point in time, we don't have qualification for the main tournament. We've only just this year introduced a cap on the number of teams at 37 for our main event. So no, there's very little even prestige in winning a pre-nats tournament. It's really just about training, I guess.
Interesting. So if we look at New Zealand as a local scene, how is it doing at the moment?
New Zealand doesn't really have I'd say a competitive local scene. We only just recently started up running some kind of league again, and it was mixed teams. We have a social night that we try to get new members in. We have a members night at Mount Wellington, which is probably the main site for our competitive players. Dunedin run a couple nights a week by themselves, but they don't really have more than I'd say 1 competitive player. So from that local scene point, it's more about just either fun or training for tournaments. We do have, starting a couple years back for the last 2 years, the New Zealand Invitationals tournament, which is a bit more of a competitive tournament. That's run down in Dunedin, and most recently we've played that on world settings as opposed to the Australasian settings.
Okay, that's cool. So you play when you play in New Zealand and it's not connected to the Nats, well, the Australian Nats, or I don't know what you call it, but Australian Championships, what's it called? I'm not even sure.
Australasian titles, I think.
Championships.
Or Australasian Championships, something like that, yeah.
Okay. But your choice would be Worlds format if you play locally.
So our tournament has been on invitationals, but we're unless we're preparing for a Worlds in the local scene, we always play the Australasian format. My preference is the Worlds format personally, but as a country, we generally always play the Australian or Australasian format. In preparation for that tournament every year.
Okay, I see. So usually when we talk Australasian versus Worlds, it usually starts off and ends with the one SPS. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because New Zealand is probably the only country in the world with so much experience from both sides.
There's definitely it's probably the main thing that differentiates the two games. So with 2 shots per second, I guess one of the biggest examples is defending a base door or a baseline. At Worlds you have so many options when attacking to bait a shot out of your opponent and then come in before they can shoot you, or training in with 2 people in a row to make sure you can knock that defender out. If the bases are set up in such a way, in our format, one person can cover a door pretty much perfectly with the 2 shot per second spam, essentially. Of course, that means you've got much less chances to dodge as well. We don't have any close combat, I guess, dueling, you'd say, because we have a larger minimum distance between players. So even then, dodging is difficult. But when you put in 2 shots per second, it becomes very difficult.
And also, there's no stuns.
Yeah, exactly. No stuns as well. You get shot anywhere and you're down.
One thing that has been talked about a lot is that for settings is that it's easier for new players who start out playing like on an average day than the settings that they play on is the same that they will compete on later on. Does that help with recruitment?
I think it definitely does help. I think that's a fair point. Like, we have a very, very big main tournament in Australia, and I think that probably contributes. I'd say for me the main reason it's so different is actually not so much the 1 shot per second or even the stuns. It's the distance rule, because when you're playing at the top end of the Worlds, people get very aggressive and very close to you, and I think for new players it's very, very intimidating to have someone of very high skill come that close to you, dodge around you, get physically up in your space. It's quite aggressive compared to the way we play, where especially on Helios now, any new player given a little bit of time can spawn against the strongest players and not have to worry about them dodging them or getting too close.
Yeah. So might that actually be like a tactic from the Australian side to make the competition format so easy to understand and learn, so it's easy to get new teams in that don't get slaughtered a lot?
I think it's more just a matter of history in that the original Helios had no settings option for that. It was doubles everywhere. And we had that for the last 3, 15, 16, three nationals tournaments. And it's only recently that PNC has started to look at offering, a difference from the standard. And then for this tournament, it was kind of too late to really change it for the tournament. They decided, for the sake of people who didn't have the setting or people coming over, GP, we'll play the standard, and then after that we can look at maybe changing the timing of your spawn.
Yeah. So if we look at the world settings, when you play with world settings, are you playing with the exactly same settings as we use in Worlds?
Yes, exactly the same as the Worlds.
Okay. So if we look at world settings, the thing that is mostly discussed is the 8-4. What do you think is the best with using 8-4 as settings for Diak and Stun?
I think for the main team event, the difference between 4 and 3 is whether you can stun someone and then take the base or not. 3 seconds doesn't give you enough time for that, whereas 4 seconds does. 3 second stuns, I think, are really good for LOR, and in fact I'd like to see that split, 8-4 for main comp, 6-3 for lore, because it encourages more, dodging out of stuns. For the team event, I don't know, it's 8-4 is what we've played for so long. It's just kind of ingrained in the way we play. I think shooting someone anywhere and then not being able to take the base is a little unfair. I'd also say that given the kind of inaccuracy of the pack, you often shoot someone in the chest or back, and they get stunned anyway. So if you can't reliably put a stun on someone, or take someone out before you take a base, that makes it, I guess, a little unfair as well.
Yeah, makes sense. Regarding the 8 then.
Yeah, 8 versus 7. If you shoot someone 8 seconds, it's just a slightly longer window to make a play on the base, make a play for a deny, than 7. I think 8 versus 7 is really just one of those things where we've played for 8 for so long. It's just how we play now. Yeah. I wouldn't mind playing a tournament on 7.
So if we talk the length of the game, you use 12 minutes, and why is 12 minutes the best setting?
We haven't played a whole lot with, more than 12 or less than 12, but in my experience, I find 12 is a good balance for, 3 sets of 5 teams to not finish the bases, but not, get too few bases. It's a good number to keep the game focused on base attack and defense without letting it go, too far in either direction. If teams come out with, 7, 8, or 9 bases on average, for me, that's a good balance versus, just pack play.
Yeah. An argument that is sort of the game length should be in contrast to the arena and the difficulty of the bases. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I definitely think that's fair. If you have an arena where the bases are so undefendable that you're getting to a 30 base game in 8, 9, 10 minutes, I definitely agree with that. But I think in our experience, you play bases over the course of pre-nats. If you find bases that are broken for our standard meta, you fix the bases rather than fixing the game time.
Yeah, of course. But basically what I'm trying to get to is it valid to have different settings depending on how the arena looks?
I don't think I don't think changing the time setting year to year is a good idea personally. Like, I think the rules should be consistent. Ideally, they'd be consistent all over the world, but at least in your local scene, year to year, I would make sure your mazes reach a certain standard that you expect and keep your rules the same.
Yeah, but it's an interesting argument.
It is.
If we look at the reloads, that is something that is really interesting, because the countries that doesn't use reloads, they don't understand why it's even there, and the countries that do use reloads are really like, oh, it's such an important part of the game. So could you talk a little bit about reloads and the importance of reloads in a comp game?
I think reloads add definitely an extra level of skill when you're managing your base defense in particular. Obviously, when your defender goes to reload, that's a prime opportunity for your attacker to take a base. So part of managing that is knowing, how many lives you have, how many your opponents are likely to have, making sure that you can reload at the same time as them rather than having a separation, because as soon as you have separation, you're going to lose the base. Given that we also have 2 shots per second, if we didn't have to reload, we could spam shots a lot more out of the base and not conserve so many. And with 2 shots per second, just the kind of fire you could lay down from the door would be pretty crazy. I mean, if you remember playing the French format, 3 shots per second with no reloading, that was just absolutely crazy, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that was horrible. Yeah, but if we look at Worlds now, with 1 shot per second, is it just as important?
I still like the added element of skill of managing, managing as a defense the reloads, because it encourages a higher base game. I think bases are hard enough to take on 1 shot per second that having that extra chance from the reload encourages a slightly higher base game, which I like.
Yeah, true. And if we look at France, because we were both there, I thought that the reloads were misplaced, unguarded, and so much closer to certain bases than others. Were they used in a proper way in Worlds for us who were there and never played otherwise?
I'd say that kind of long maze design where you've got 3 bases in a row doesn't exactly work all the time for reloads. I think having the 2 there with blue base having the option of either reload depending what side you're on probably contributed to Blue Base's weakness in the center there. Attacked from both sides and reloaded on from both sides. It wasn't great. The Green Base reload in particular was quite a way out from the Green Base, and that's kind of punishing to the defense when you have to run really far just to be able to defend. And there were a couple of physical choke points as well near those reloads.
Yes.
Which encourages collisions, which is never good. Not that we haven't had dangerous reloads in our tournaments. We certainly have, but it's not ideal.
The hand sensor is an interesting thing. Now, do you use the hand sensor on Nexus as well?
So we have done traditionally. I think it's on by default. I honestly can't remember if we've had it turned off or not for our Worlds training, but I prefer it. On Helios, we have it on. I'm not sure if I've never been on the committee that manages our tournament, so I'm not sure if they've had that discussion. I think it's probably historically we've always had the two-hand sensor on. I prefer it after playing Worlds. I prefer it off.
So, you're thinking of going to the European Championships?
Yeah, that's right. We'd like to bring a full strength 5 Cobra team to the European Championships. It's mostly a matter of funding at this point and getting one more player to get the leave or to agree to come. But we'd love to come with a full strength Cobras team.
So who's on right now?
I think the ones who, if we do go, that would definitely be going would be Popeyes, V-Dark, and Margie. Myself, I'm very likely to go if we get our full strength. Arcane and Ace can't make it, so we're looking at a player you won't have seen who is on our team this year, Hatman. And if we can't have, he's the 8th one or the 7th Cobra. If we can't have him, we would be probably looking around for some of the top Australian players to make up our 5.
Yeah, exactly, because the slot is open for the entire region. So, something I saw in the pre-nats, I was watching the finals, but you dumped the base in the finals.
We did dump the base in the finals. Going into that tournament, we didn't have a lot of plans, but we did decide that if we went into our base at the start of the game and saw that the ref was a Maroons ref or a Wolfpack ref, that would rather not have them chicken out our game. This is a common theme for us at tournaments, especially with the Maroons. They like to follow us around to watch us play. So we thought we'd just dump. As it turned out, they were in pretty much all of our games, so we ended up dumping all tournament. And by the time we got to finals, we really didn't have any other plan. So we just kept dumping.
Oh, okay. Because you asked me on the chat if I watched the finals. So I figured, like, when I saw you dump, I'm like, oh, they're doing our tactic.
Your tactic, GP tactic. Seems to be the only tactic that really works on Helios right now.
Yeah, that's true. But we were lucky that we found that tactic in Worlds. Like we were in some deep trouble before we found that one out. But it was it was the game length. We were sort of these 2 extra minutes. What we did in the end is that let's do our tactics, but the first 2 minutes we won't leave the base. We just stand there, and when it's 10 minutes left, then we start our game, because then we know how to do it. Because every time we're like, okay, everything's done, we have our 10 bases, and okay, shit, 2 minutes left. And then people sort of caught up with us. So
yeah, it's definitely an issue. If you dump and you finish too quickly and you don't keep the action away, you can definitely lose the game that way. But GP beat us by essentially dumping their way through the tournament, so why not learn from that?
Yeah, and they have some strong pack players. It's really hard.
Yeah, going into that final, it felt like GP were gunning for us. It was like they didn't, they were hounding Legacy for points to deny us from getting Legacy's points, and Legacy were clearly had an agenda for second. I mean, they might disagree with that, but that's just how it felt with me.
Oh, they always do.
To play.
They always do.
Yeah, it's if you guys had done a little better in the round robin, you would have been fresher when you came to play us in the semi-final. But you guys were clearly out of steam by that point.
That's true. Oh yeah. Okay, let's leave the comp for now and talk side events. because you do play side events as well. Like usually I spend a lot of time talking about elimination, but you don't play it so much from what I understand.
No, pretty much not at all.
Yeah, so that settles it. We won't talk elimination. So what are the typical New Zealand side events?
Well, I guess I'll talk Australasian side events because our tournaments are so short that we don't really have time for them. But I guess the ones with the most prestige are solos, LOR, and doubles. And our doubles is pretty much the same as like the world's triples, in that it's the standard game, a bit shorter, but pairs of two going around trying to get six bases total.
How many teams per game?
Just trying to remember. I think about 8.
Okay, all colors.
Yeah. All colors in 8 teams, I believe, is the go.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So if you compare that to what I have to call American style of triples, with 7 triples doing the same thing more or less like your doubles, what's the pros and cons?
Ooh. So with 7 triples in a 3 base maze, your opening might be something like 2, 2, and 3 as for the distribution. Whereas with 8 double pairs, you're likely to have 3, 3, 2. So you're likely to only have one base that is only contested by a single team versus 2 bases for the 17 game. And that by itself is huge because in the early stages of doubles, games can actually be decided at the first couple minutes of the game depending on which teams get a free base or don't get a free base. I know that in triples finals where myself, Ace, and Gus placed 3rd, there was one game in that final where we took 5 bases for free because of the distribution of players and probably the way that GP was managing the game, which was both of their teams just dominating a couple of bases and keeping everyone out. Yeah,
we came 4th. Solos, how do you play that?
It's pretty similar to World Solos. You just get, I think, about 20 people in the game, 8-minute game. We play, I think it can vary year to year, but typically like a set of 5 games, you drop your best and your worst score, or play 4 games and drop your worst score, and then your total score left is, what you're left with to win the game. Some mazes that might be too few players. I feel I don't know if you've seen the map or much of the cameras, but the Albury maze that we're playing in this year is very, very large, and I'd like to see much more than 20 players in there.
I only saw the cameras, and there were 3, and one wasn't showing much at all. The green base, it's impossible to see anything.
It's hard to see. Yeah.
Okay, and you use the reloads on solos as well?
Yep, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
What we saw at Worlds with the reloads, besides your and Popeyes, all the top players were standing more or less under the reload, dueling. Do you get that as well, or?
Well, I mean, you have to be near. Yeah, you have to be near a reload typically, but then again, your and Popeyes came 1st and 2nd respectively, so they were doing something right. Popeyes was actually near the other reload. It seems like nobody was playing in that entire half of the maze, and he was able to just camp that reload and run around the back of everybody, shoot them all in the back, reload, shoot them all in the back again, and carry himself to 2nd place. He didn't really duel much at all.
Yeah, so because we don't use these reloads, so it's really the whole thing that is sort of centered around something in solos is a little bit weird because we usually, without reloads, there's a lot of more movement. But
yeah, I'd like to see solos without reloading. It definitely encourages use of the full maze, and this Albury maze in particular, the reloads are all pretty tight in little corners of maze pockets. So I can't imagine it's going to be particularly great if they run with reloads.
Yeah. Okay, looking at the other sides, we have the LOR. We don't play that in Sweden, but do you play it often? Do you play it every year? Or?
Yeah, it's played every year. Since it's switched from Nexus to Helios, I've been not so much a fan of it. Kind of too many doubles for my liking. Also, like they might not like me for saying this, but when you watch the top end of the Australasian side players play Law, and then you watch the top of the world's play Law, it's a very different game. Because we don't play it constantly in every one of our games, we don't really have that dodging play style ingrained in us. So I think our skill overall for LOR is much, much lower than you see at the Worlds. For example, I expect if Kutamo can play on Helios as well as he can play on Nexus, I expect him to clean up Claw this year.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay, let's look at the other formats, because there is one format we never play in Europe that I know they play it in the US, and I think you play it over in Australia and New Zealand. It's called base flags.
We never play competition base flags. I haven't personally played base flags in a large number of years. We used to play that at our members' nights, maybe 5 to 10 years ago, but it is not an event that we play.
Okay, but this this inflatable course.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I should correct myself a bit. That was the triples format in Bendigo, and I think they now sometimes play that. It hasn't been one of our main comp formats. Our triples format changes every single year between all kinds of random stuff, and in the 2015 Nationals, that was the event chosen for that year.
Oh, okay. Because I saw some videos from it, so I thought, like, oh, this is cool. Is this what they do? Because
I totally forgot, but that actually is quite cool. Like, just I think that year they had a roller rink, and they just inflated a bunch of stuff, cut it in half, and played a cool 3 versus 3 base flags format.
Okay. So I won't consider that New Zealand format anyway. So.
No.
Okay. If we look at the European Championships a little bit, and it's do you know what a Swede format is?
I've only heard very briefly something. Is it 3 versus 3 at a single base, and
yes,
you played that? You're both attacking simultaneously. Is that
yes,
right?
Exactly. Both teams attacking at the same time, and bases can be shot infinite amount of times.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because that's if we have a few number of players at training, especially before everyone arrives, that's actually very similar to how we play our training games. You just get a bunch of people at a single base, infinite base takes, and just go for it. So it actually sounds like something we've actually played a fair bit.
That's cool. So and there's a lot of videos. I'll send you some links afterwards. You can compare.
Yeah.
And that is very prestigious in Sweden, at least, because that's like our side event, and it will be played in Swedish settings with the 6-3 instead of the
6-3
instead of the 7-3. Yeah, so to get that fast movement and a lot of duels and a lot of corners, around the bases and stuff like that.
Are denies worth the same amount? Do you still lose the same 500 per shot and take the 4,001 for the base, or are the bases worth different amount? Yeah, same amount?
Yeah, same.
Ooh.
So, and there is no deny points for the opposition team.
Oh, no bonus deny points. Okay. No. Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Yeah, so that is probably like the new format for you guys. Otherwise, everything should be something that you have tried before.
Yeah, and even that's not too. I think the 7-3 and no reloading will be the thing that really differs for us. I mean, we've played a lot. The Cobras have played a lot now on the 1 shot per second and the dodging, but that could definitely throw us. We'd definitely have to train a bit for it in the limited time we'd have between Nats and the European Championship. Yeah, maybe more the 3 second stun as it relates to base takes could be interesting to play.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, I think that will change more for you than the reloads, actually. Okay, then, let's see. We've talked about this and that, and we're actually done with my little note here. I would like to talk a little bit about GP and the Australian Championships, Australasian, or whatever.
Yeah. Australasian, yeah.
I was watching the podcast with Nufa, I think his name is.
Yeah, that would have been the one with Nufa, Aibo, Mushu, and Simi, I think.
Yeah, Simi Bear, yeah. And that's why I actually started this podcast, because I was watching that and they were talking about GP and their chances. We'll get back to that.
Mm.
And then was sort of saying like, no, Simi Bear, because I saw she was watching the entire Worlds more or less. And she said like, our game pace is so fast. I was watching Worlds and it's so slow. It's like game for old people, more or less. Didn't say that, but that was sort of a message.
That was her tone. I have to disagree very, very strongly with her statements. I think anyone who has actually played Worlds at the highest level and has also played Australasian Nats at the highest level understands that they're both very athletic games. I would even make the argument that Worlds is more athletic simply because of the way you dodge and duel at Worlds. There's nothing really like that at Australasian Nats. You run around fast a lot. You shoot quickly, but the physicality for me of the Worlds game is much more intense.
Yeah, that was interesting. And I was sort of thinking that as well. And that's why I started this whole interviewing everyone from around the world about different settings.
Yeah, I think in Australia there might be a bit of that kind of a narrative that is the case. But I don't think that's a narrative shared by people who have actually played both for any real length of time.
Yeah. So what do you think about GP's chances?
I am not underrating them as much as many of the other teams seem to be underrating them. People have convinced themselves that trying to change to our way of playing is going to be so difficult for them. But I just have to keep pointing out to them that the Cobras took a few months of training between a Nationals and a Worlds, and then came second in the Worlds pretty convincingly, and weren't that far off beating the best team in the world for the last however many years. So, and I know how good GP are individually and as a team. If they train, even half as much as we trained for Worlds, I expect them to be in the top 5 or the top 3. I could be wrong. That it could just be too much for them, but I certainly wouldn't count them out. I think for them, their biggest trouble will be that they can't use their physicality as much as they used it at Worlds. Dueling someone like for me at Worlds was very, very difficult because he's just huge. You can go over the top of someone's head at Worlds. You can physically dominate the shit out of them, right? Whereas in our format, you get anywhere near that close and you take a turn. You go over someone's head, even in lore, you take a turn. So if they have to keep their distance and not get as as physical, it could be tough.
Yeah.
So yeah, they should do well.
Yeah. So let's say you come to European Championships. How do you think you will do?
Well, it is in their home maze, right? GP's home maze.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would not expect to win that tournament, but based on what I saw at the Worlds, I would be pretty confident of grand finals, and I'd hope to come second again. I understand that your team didn't have their regular strongest 5 at Worlds.
No.
Is that right?
Yeah, we used 3 players of 3 were from our team.
Yeah, so I'd expect the top 5 to look like GP Legacy, us, you, and I'm guessing there's probably another strong Finnish team that we haven't seen at Helsinki, maybe.
Yeah.
But I'd expect us to perform. Yeah, I don't know how do they play in Sweden in terms of touching panels with your pack or your body.
Well, yeah, it's called the wall hug. We are like the problem with Worlds was that the walls were built so that the wall hug was sort of enhanced by the structure of the wall.
The lips, the little wooden lips that come out certainly.
I think that
aid you.
Yeah, that was the worst part, because people really put their chest sensor inside the wall, so to speak, and then lifted their arms so you couldn't see the shoulders, and then there was not much to do about it.
Yeah, we had pretty much perfect covers on a door. The 2 or 3 man train would break it, but otherwise you're pretty much unstoppable on that door.
Yeah. So yeah, I think if you just build the walls better, it's not that much of an issue. Now it became an issue because of that. I have more issues with the covering the pack sound. That's like... Yeah.
We have very, very strict rules about verbal pack masking in Australia. You do take terms for it when it's obvious. Yeah, we don't like it. When we got to the site, we felt like it was louder playing Worlds than our comp. Like GP Legacy, there was some really loud volume going on.
Yeah, but usually it's no problem with the pack covering the pack zone, because you make the call before the player wake up. If I'm standing by you say A and B, we say left and right. But if I stay on the right,
we don't say A and B.
Okay, they do. But
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I stand by the right entrance, I'm dead. I have 6 seconds left. When there's 1 second left, then they start shouting right or A or B or whatever. Why didn't they say it before? I mean, it makes totally no sense.
I agree. My preference would be a rule that you can yell while you're spawning as long as you don't pull a shot out of your phaser. You should never be allowed to shoot and speak at the same time. And that's pretty harsh, but an absolute rule like that, once people take a couple terms for it, they won't do it anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense. In a duel, I suppose, sniping is a different thing.
Sure. Yeah, but absolute rules, they don't leave any room for interpretation, and that's how you get rid of a lot of this kind of crap.
That's true. Okay then. Thanks, Jono.
Okay. Well, yeah. Cheers.
See ya.
See ya.
So after talking to Jono, I was really looking forward to the next interview with Butza from Australia. Because I wouldn't say Jono really stood up for the Australian format, more leaning towards Worlds format, and I wanted to find someone who would strongly support the Australian format, who could make that sound like the natural way to go. So the next interview with Australia would be that interview. But looking back, the interview with Jono is really good in that sense that it's really analytical. He has valid reasons for all his thoughts and ideas. Probably what makes him and me prefer different settings is how we see like a maze, how we picture a maze. I picture a small maze, 400 square meters, something like that, small bases, high speed, and of course if you look at the game that way, then a lot of like 12 minutes and reloads and stuff doesn't really add up. However, if you picture these huge arenas like the ones that they used in Albury this year, I heard it was like really big, then of course a shorter game would not really be that cool. So anyways, next one is with Butza from Maroons, one of the like legendary players, I suppose, at least outside of Australia. He's a legendary Australian player. Is often different locally, but to the rest of the world he is like the Australian player. That's Butza. Has been playing for a very long time, has been to Worlds at least twice, knows both formats, the Australian and European one. Maybe not the European one, but that's sort of a given because no one outside of Europe knows about it. I was very much looking forward to it. I have not talked to him before, so it's the first time we talk. I think it went very well, and yeah, let's just listen to it. Okay, so I'm in an interview with Ben Baker from Australia, playing with the name Butza in the team called Maroons. Welcome.
Thank you, Andreas. Thanks for having me. And you have to be the first person who's announced my alias correctly, so well done.
Thank you.
I get lots of Butza. To pronounce Butza straight off the bat without having heard it before, then congratulations.
Thank you very much. Could you talk to me a little bit about Maroons as a team?
Yeah, Maroons as a team started in 2009, playing at home at the Sunshine Coast, but the crux of the team really formed in 2010. It was a very different team in 2009. They did win at home, which was good, and then in 2010, the sort of current structure sort of came together. And we went through the trials and tribulations that a normal new team has, and we had a series of years where we finished in that sort of 4th to 6th range, and we couldn't quite crack into finals. And then come 2014, we sort of broke through. We made the final. We got a 3rd that year, and then we've had a series of, we've had 3 wins in a row now. So we've sort of learnt from what we've found is because of our finals experience, we tend to play closer to our best than other teams in finals because due to lack of experience or lack of being there before, as all teams have usually when they first get there, that level of nerves can kick in, maybe not have you play quite your best. And we've been around long enough now to know that we can play our best when it really matters. And we did actually break up this year, and the GP coming to the Australasian Championships sort of spurred us to reform for one more year, just so we thought it would be a damn shame if we had the Australasian Championships champs and the world champs in the same room at the same time and not playing against each other. So we thought that was something that the scene really required, and so we decided to reform just for one more last stand.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like an epic showdown, isn't it?
Kind of, yeah. Although we haven't trained quite as much as we have in previous years, so we'll see how epic it is. We do believe this will probably be the hardest of all the tournaments that we've played in to win, just because of the level of the teams that are going to be there. And there's been a real a big growth in our scene, especially in all levels of the ladder, but particularly in the top end of the ladder. There's more top level teams that can compete for finals than there ever has been. And to add GP to that mix as well, it's going to make this one probably the hardest to win out of probably any Nats I've been to, I think.
Yeah, but that's the most fun, right? So you're making this, is this like your final show for the team or for all the players in the team, or?
Yeah, it'll be the final show for the team. It won't be the final show for the players. So what we're sort of doing now is sort of spreading out a little bit and playing with other teams in our local Queensland scene. And we have a local. We're hosting in 2019 at the Sunshine Coast, which is a city in Queensland, where the Maroons are from. So we'll be sort of spreading out and playing amongst a whole bunch of teams. And we're getting a little bit older now, so there's a lot of really good young talent coming through, and sort of the best probably way to utilise us now is our experience in big games, particularly. So we'll be sharing that experience amongst all the younger players. It's for us, it's more about legacy now than it is around winning trophies. So we just really want to make sure that we pass down as much knowledge and understanding of the game as we can to the next generation of players.
And that's cool. That's something with the Australian scene I've always been impressed with. Like you have more generations of players than all the other countries I've been talking to. You have people like Doc and Doug. I'm not sure, was Doug a player back in the day, or has he always been like a tech?
No, he was a player. Actually, the first ever nationals I ever played in 2001, I played on a team with Doug because I was originally from Western Australia. I grew up there, and Doug is a local West Australian, and we played on the very first West Australian team that ever competed at the what was called then the Zone Nationals, which is now called the Australasian Championships. He's always been a player, but he's really involved as somebody who deeply involved in our scheduling and writing of software and all that kind of thing now.
Yeah, that's what's so cool with the Australian scene, sort of, that you have this older generation that is not playing as active, but is still, the heart is still in the game, so they contribute in so many ways.
It's just a matter of time for you guys, mate. Really, yeah, it'll go really quick. And it's also a cultural thing as well. And I think any country can have this cultural aspect, but it has been a focal point for our community to. We've been lucky enough to have some really good site operators that have supported the scene from the beginning and set a really good cultural standard that everybody really chips in to bring forward whatever skills and gifts they have to make the tournament as good as it can. We've managed to retain a lot of players, because when people feel like they're part of the decision making and they feel like they're part of the community because they're having a contribution to what's to the actual running of the tournament and stuff like that, people tend to stick around because they really enjoy that. And that's the advantage we've had in Australia. We're now getting into that multi-generational thing where people have been around for 20 odd years and their kids are now playing. Like Doc's kids are now playing nationals, and there's a guy Mopar who looks after all the tech side of things. And in 2004, I remember at the nationals at the dinner, he announced to me that he's just about to have his first child, and he's now just his first child is now about to compete in his first nationals maybe next year in Sunshine Coast. So it's really kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. So moving along a bit, Australia is differing most from the world's format compared to all the other nations. Have you always played Lasertag the same way as you play it now, the same settings more or less, or is that something relatively new?
Okay, so this is a bit of a big story. So originally in Western Australia, we used to play one-handed, 4 shots per second, 2-second stuns, which was a wild, crazy, fast and furious game. When the West Australian community first started playing the national scene, we had to learn how to play two-handed with 8-second deactivations and 2 shots per second. At that time, the Australian format had I call it the dark ages of Australian nationals, where we had covering in. So from the period of around 2001 through to 2009, there was a solution that was created to deal with the fact that reffing covering was really hard. So let's just allow people to cover. They can't cover all their senses, so it'll just make it a lot easier to ref. So that was kind of good in theory, but in practice what happened is people who had never seen our game before would look at our game and go, oh, look, everyone's cheating. And it wasn't a good look. And so in 2010, 2011, I think, was the first year we had 2010 was the first year we had no covering again. We went back to no covering, and we decided to face the challenges of reffing covering head on. And is it perfect? No, but did it improve the game? I think the community would resoundingly say yes. And it brought us more into line with what was happening internationally as well. And but on a national level, we've always played 2 shots a second, 8-second deactivations, and no stuns, essentially. From what I can remember anyway, and I've been playing since 2001. So,
yeah. Okay, well that's enough going back. Like, I mean, what happens before 2001 might not be relevant today anyway. Okay.
There was only 99 and 2000. There's only 2 years before 2001, and a lot of people in the scene say, nationals really didn't start till 2001 anyway. So that's probably far enough back.
Yeah. Okay. If we look at the settings a little bit, and we start off with the game time. In the Worlds, we got 10 minutes of game time. In Australia, you're going with 12. What is the best thing about having 12 minutes per game?
To be honest, my position on it is that if we were starting nationals from scratch, I would make it 10-minute games as well. I believe it's 12 minutes was probably, I don't know why 12 minutes was chosen, but it was probably more of a carryover from what we had learnt from, I think the Americans were doing big tournaments in the 90s, and we were probably following on from either what the game time was in public games or what was happening elsewhere. I wasn't in the decision-making matrix at that point, so I don't know why 12 minutes was chosen, but at this point, changing things in our nationals is like turning the Titanic. It's a big beast, and to change something like game time is a difficult proposition to push forward. So we haven't really looked at it, but I believe 10 minutes would actually, if I was starting the nationals from scratch, my position would be, let's go with 10-minute games. I just believe that I feel that too many games go to 10 bases for all the teams, and I feel that a balanced arena, the winning team should be getting maybe between 5 and 8 bases or something like that.
Yeah.
We should have less games going to 10, and that's just my personal position. And I think reducing games to 10 minutes would probably help assist in that. Mm. It would reward teams for getting off to a good start and having a good strategy, and they would get rewarded because it'd be less time for teams to catch up by just dumping, essentially. So
yeah. Okay. You are choosing to use the hand sensor. Is that a new thing for Helios, or have you always been using the hand sensor?
We've always been using the hand sensor since I can remember. Again, my personal position is I would like to turn them off because I feel that it inhibits the real fancy shots, and because your finger only has to slip off by a micromillimeter, and you get tagged. So it does inhibit you from wanting to sometimes do the big fancy shots or maybe be a little bit more innovative with your handholds and stuff like that. And then of course you apply a huge penalty for people who want to fire with one hand. But no, the general position of our community at this stage is let's leave the hand sensors on, and it's not really our decision because the site operator gets insurances and things based upon the two hand sensor being on. So it is more of an insurance matter. Well, the argument for leaving them on is more of an insurance matter. We need to get permission by the site operator to turn them off. And so far, site operators have been, no, I want to leave them on. So that's basically why we're still on two hands. Wow. Again, if it was just a tournament and we were doing it from scratch, I'd be like, let's turn the hand sensors off. And that's another fail point as well. It's another thing that can potentially fail in a game. I know with Nexus, we had a lot of issues with sweat and dirt getting caught between the two gun plastics and creating issues with hand sensors becoming not working during game and stuff like that. And I imagine if a grand final was decided because somebody's hand sensor stopped working at a critical point, somebody came in, took the base, and you lost the grand final because of that. That's what I sort of look at, those kinds of things.
That would be horrible. If we move on a little bit, you have 8 seconds deactivation, same as Worlds. So what would you say would be the best thing of using 8 seconds for deactivation time?
I think this is another one where it's legacy for us. We've always been 8, and to change it would fundamentally probably change the game too much. And I know in WA they play with 6 seconds. We've sometimes trained with 6 seconds just so that we train under more difficult situation than we play. I can see the merit in 6 seconds. I think it would there'd be less times where you'd tag everybody on the outside of the base, run in, shoot the base clean, and walk out. You would have to be covering your doors every single time you go for base because you just never know when people are going to be turning back on and coming in the base. So I think it would increase your awareness as a player. I think it would just. I think it'd actually improve the skill level of the players by going to 6 or 7 seconds. That's just my personal viewpoint. I haven't actually played it enough to know for sure, though. I'd be interested to actually hear a little bit of feedback from the other people you've spoken to, or even yourself, about what impact they think it's had on their game.
Yeah. Okay, I see. So, okay, so could we add something that is beneficial with 8 seconds, maybe?
Beneficial with 8 seconds.
I know some people are saying that you have to work better as a team in a defense, for instance, when there's 8 seconds.
Yeah, I could see the merit for that. Yeah, I could see why that would be an argument. And to be honest, I don't have enough games on 6 seconds to compare what the differences would be, and it hasn't been a topical point for us in Australia either. 8 seconds has been all the way it's always done and the way it's done at Worlds, so there's been no argument over changing that.
Yeah, it looks like it's in Worlds it's going to remain like that. So unless you are traveling to Northern Europe, it shouldn't be an issue. So, but you're welcome to come and try it.
I would love to. I didn't realise you guys were on 6 seconds actually, and so now I'm even more intrigued and keen to come over.
Okay, if we talk about the reloads, Worlds, America and Australia and New Zealand are using reloads and are really fond of the reloads, whilst Europe doesn't use reloads and are really questioning the purpose of reloads. So could you talk a little bit about the pros with using reloads on the field?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you guys require that the deactivated player has to relinquish their spot?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'd say is the core difference between our game, is that in our game, the deactivated player doesn't have to relinquish their spot. So we have reloads that keep, stop a player from basically just owning a position and never moving. So you could, maybe you could argue those things go hand in hand. Yeah, I'd be interested to hear why they feel reload. What's the purpose of reloads? For us, it does actually it creates a little bit of X factor. So it's another thing that players have to track. It does come into your strategy a bit. So for example, the Australian style of game, or the Australasian style of game, can be very defensive. So we like to spread through the arena and own areas of the arena, shut the game down, make it a low base game, albeit the arena has to suit this style of game.
Yeah.
And what we'll do is we will run defenses through lives, and then when they reload, or when there's an opportunity through reloading, we pounce in, get a base, and pull back into a defensive structure again. So it does form part of our strategy in a way. Yeah. What else can I say about reloading?
I was talking to Jono from Cobras, and he was saying that if you have strong base defense, people are good at standing inside the base, and since you use the 2 shots per second, they can sort of just spam their shots whilst they're on the defense. Do you think that makes sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, that is a really good point from Jono. It makes the defense have to be more mindful of how many shots they're using, and also we become in defense very mindful of making sure that the defensive players aren't all losing lives at the same time, if that makes sense. So you don't want two of your defenders having to reload at the same time. So we tend to try and offset our reloads by playing in a way where one player will get tagged a few times before the other player does. You do have to be more mindful of how many shots you're using, and who's getting tagged when, and also having your position replaced when you go to reloads. So if you've got a key defensive post, that you need to let your team know when you're getting low, and they need to come in and cycle out with you. So it does add an extra level of organisation to the defence.
Yeah.
And also gives the attackers the opportunity to get into a base against really good defence, because every defender needs to reload multiple times during the game. So it gives the attack windows of opportunity, and requires the defence to be more organised in order to completely lock down their base.
Yeah. How many reloads do you use when you play?
Typically it's 3, yeah, but sometimes we've had 2, depending on the arena. And, the spacing of the reloads is important too. We try to make sure that the reloads are even, it's an equal distance to get between every base and a reload. And because we don't want one reload getting necessarily used more than other reloads because it's in a better location, because it just causes congestion and stuff like that. And then you get people hanging around the reload to get points and all this kind of thing. So, yeah, there's a bit of thought that's put into that. And you don't want the reloads too close to base either, because then there's no point in having them. Yeah. If the defender can lose all their lives or shots and then take 2 steps, reload and come back again, then there's no point in the reload, really. So we make sure that they're a good distance away from the bases, so that, if somebody has to reload, if a defender has to reload, the attacker's got a very real chance of cracking the base at that point.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. Like it's like another level of base play.
Yeah, I think the reloading adds to it. I do like the relinquishing of a spot that is done at. I think it's done at Worlds, but the way you guys play, where you get tagged and you have to relinquish your spot, difficult to probably. You guys would be able to speak to this more than I could, but it could potentially be difficult to ref at times. But I do like the idea behind it. But I like the X factor that's created by having reloads on, and the level of organisation that's required to manage them. I think it adds to the game.
Yeah, it makes sense. Talking about relinquishing your spot, is there a difference from Australia and sort of the rest of the world, but not New Zealand, obviously, but when it comes to the culture of duels and the sort of mano a mano that is more of the American style?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's the biggest difference, I'd say, is that particular piece. So when we come and play Worlds, that's the gap that we need to close typically, is that pack-on-pack, man-on-man, brawling Lord of the Rings style. We've only been playing Lord of the Rings since 2012, I think was our first year. And we've got some decent players. Playing on 2 shots a second isn't I mean, when we play Lord of the Rings, we play on 1 shot per second with stuns and everything. So we don't play Lord of the Rings on the same format that we play the team game. But typically we don't. We haven't ever. I don't think we've ever trophied at a Worlds in Lord of the Rings, but potentially.
No.
Yeah. So we're still learning that craft. I think our like strength is the playing panels, playing partition edges, positioning, team organisation, that kind of stuff is the strength of the Australians. Whereas when we came up, I played 2014 Worlds against the Legends, and their strength was standing out in the open and brawling. That's what they like to do.
Yeah. So the biggest difference, the one that everyone is talking about, is of course the 2 shots per second. What is the best thing with 2 shots per second?
The best thing with 2 shots per second is that there could be 2 people, or sometimes even 3 people inside a base defending it, and if you're good enough, you can crack all 3 of them and take the base out. And I'm sure that's possible on 1 shot per second as well, but it's what we found is that you just can't get enough shots out to get everybody.
Yeah, true.
It just takes too long. So on 1 shot per second, if you load a base up with 3 people on the inside, it's almost impossible to crack unless you're a freak and you can dodge out of multiple shots from 2 different people. So it's rare. So that's what we love about our style of game. And don't get me wrong, I love the Worlds format as well. I'm a big fan, but I don't think one style of game is better. I know that people internationally would disagree with me in that one, but I think they're very different style of game. And the key for us and a lot of people that we speak to about this is that I want to be able to come into base and take out 3 players and have that crazy awesome base take and have the ability to get enough shots out of my phaser to actually take everybody out. And it happens all the time in our format.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is the same for all arenas on the Worlds format, but what I've found playing the Worlds format is that the amount of rotation of the people inside the base is less. So bases tend to get locked down more, whereas on the Australian format, there'll be 2 people holding the inside of the base, and 30 seconds later there'll be a different 2, and then 30 seconds later there'll be a different 2, and then 15 seconds later there'll be a different 2, and it's much more dynamic in the interior of the base is much more dynamic in the amount of player flow that goes through, because it's a bit easier to crack the base and get everybody out. Yeah, that's what we like about our game. What we like about the 1 shot per second game is I love the stun thing, and I love being able to bait a shot, and then you're 2 meters away from a player, you bait them, they get them to fire a shot, you've got a second to lunge onto them, take them out, or if you get the stun, you can advance on them and take them out, and that whole man-on-man play that you can do on that format is just so fun to play. It's like, super fun. So I don't know. It would be great to have the best of both worlds, and in fact, I actually would love to see some of the best teams come together and maybe try 1.5 shots a second and see if we couldn't actually get the best of both worlds in there. But it hasn't been tried yet, so we don't know.
No. Maybe what we could do is maybe put it as a side at Worlds at some point. Yeah,
it'll be a great experiment.
Yeah, I'm actually going to Sunshine Coast, I think, if I find a team to play with. Yeah, because I think we need to have players playing your format in Australia to sort of be able to evaluate it properly. Because we can't, let's play Australian format and we turn it on our computer in Gothenburg with only worlds. Well, we don't play world style, but only people who play our nationals. I mean, we won't play it the way it's supposed to be played. We will try to play it like duels and stuff, but it's not the right way to go about it. So I have to go to Australia and play it with you guys to see how you play it, to see you see where I'm going.
Absolutely, and the same goes for us as well. I mean, when we proposed Worlds format to the Australian community, people play it once and in inverted commas don't like it, but you haven't really given it a fair assessment and you haven't seen it played as it's supposed to be played yet. So I agree. Yeah, you really need to go and see it played by the people who play it all the time to really do a fair assessment on it.
Yeah.
Any format that is. Yeah, we would love to have you over, and if any international players ever want to come over, as has Dot, and Dot's done this from the US, just put himself in as a spare player and you'll get allocated to a team if you don't bring your own team, essentially.
I probably think I would like the Australian settings more than the world settings as it is, because I think the world settings is a little bit slow. I think, and that is sort of why I'm doing this, because I think it's like you have the Australian format and you have the world's format and you have to pick one. That's like the discussion going on right now. It's like there's only this or that, but the truth is there are so many ways, like different ways to play it. So wherever you go, people have perfectly good reasons to play the way they play, regardless of who you talk. Okay, maybe this interview you've been sort of thrashing your own settings a little bit, but otherwise people are sort of like they can give reasons for every single settings that they are using. So
I think that's a really good attitude to have to this whole thing, and Andreas, and I think if we take that attitude into it, we'll actually find the settings that players love to play. And that is, I think the other thing to consider is, at some stage we're going to, and it's already happening, we're getting more heavily into broadcasting, and we've got better internet worldwide now, so we can live stream things, and we're getting better at figuring out how to produce live content. And we're going to have to find the game format that people like to watch as well. If we really are serious about getting this game into the mainstream and getting people watching it, then it's, how it's played is important, but also, this is just my perspective, but how engaged is the viewer as well? How interesting is it to the viewer? And if the game is a bit slow and stagnant, I'm not sure that's maybe the best thing for the game. I don't know if we'll get enough people watching it to motivate enough young kids to take the game on, to build the numbers in the sport. So I think the approach you're taking is really, really, really good. And I really hope to see this debate continue, and for us to experiment a little bit as well.
Yeah, we'll see where this leads. So I have two theories I would like to share with you. The first one is that in Australia it's easier for you to get new players to play competitively, because with the no stuns and with the 2 shots per second, the game they play on an average day, when they play the first time, resembles more to your national format than in Europe. See where I'm going?
Totally, yeah. That's a really hard one. It's a really hard one, because the only way we'd know for sure is if we suddenly changed to do stuns and 1 shot per second and watch the difference.
Yeah, that's true.
Because there's too many factors involved in what's influencing player numbers, and we've got a really good set of operators that support local leagues, and like essentially a lot of new players come out of local areas and local leagues, and so that's having a big impact. We also have the Australian community has always, this is from the beginning, has always had a focus of fairly balancing competitiveness with social. So we've always had a lot of socialising and social events around the nationals, which means that people form friendships, and then people are coming to nationals not just to compete but to hang out with their mates. So that's had an impact on numbers as well. And then of course success breeds success. So because we had such a big successful comp, and the host site closed down for a week, and we play so many games and all that kind of stuff, that also impacted a lot of retention. So we got really good retention numbers in our nationals. We get a lot of the same players back every year. The average number, I don't know what the average number of nationals played per player is, but it would be high. It would be in the 4 or 5 range or something like that, probably, or between 3 and 5. So yeah, it's really hard to isolate the game format and see what impact it's having on our numbers, but I can totally follow your argument, and there's very much a possibility that's having a real impact as well.
Okay, so my second theory is this. This one is more controversial, but the fact that we use 3 teams on our main event is stupid, because it doesn't make sense for a bigger crowd to have 3 teams.
When you say it doesn't make sense for a bigger crowd,
Yeah, because
What do you mean by that?
if you look at sports, it's two teams playing against each other, and the best team wins. Well, usually there's some sort of factors to that, but usually the best team wins. And now you have three teams playing, and suddenly people are like base hopping. Two teams are switching bases, and the third team is like, okay, what are we doing now? Now you have 12 minutes, so you might be sort of can live with that. But two teams can actually work against the third team, and the end result might be that the best team does not win. So as a competition to other, when I speak to other people, they play football, soccer, whatever, and it doesn't make any sense the way you talk about this, because you don't get to measure your strength against another team, but you're sort of playing a fun game because there are three teams. It's too much of an X factor. You see where I'm going?
Yeah. Geez, that's an interesting question, and I think so. For that to happen, two teams need to sort of agree that they're going to screw the third team out in a way. I mean, you can kind of one team can decide they're going to screw another team, but I think we've all played enough at Lasertag to know that when you try to force a result, it can sometimes blow up in your face. So really, the cooperation of two teams would be required to force a result, and I think I personally love the fact that we have three teams. I think it adds a dimension to the game which is just really phenomenal and creates a uniqueness in our sport. There's not too many other sports that I don't know of any sports that have three teams playing at a time, and the strategy required and everything to win games is multi-dimensional. In Australia, we have a culture of not doing that, so we have never had an issue with two teams from the same state or region teaming up to screw out another team because the penalties for doing so are too high.
Thinking sort of a scenario, if we are like optimistic and we move maybe 10 years into the future and we have like a big tournament with maybe prize money involved, and you have three teams going in, it's sort of it's on a broader scale. Like if we sort of imagine this as a big sport with sponsors and prize money, and then you have three teams playing for prize money, and you have a really strong team that would probably win, and you have two teams that will not win the prize money and they can sort of win it anyway. It's just I'm not saying like I enjoy three teams. I like playing three teams. I think it's cool. I think competition format would be really boring without three teams. But in the future, as a big sport, I don't really see how it can work once we have, sponsorships or prize money or, anything like that. Then three teams will be really a flaw to this game.
With that, I absolutely agree. And So the analogy that I use here, and you guys might not be familiar so much with cricket, but we have in the game of cricket, there's a version called Test cricket, which is 5 days long. It's the most traditional form of the game. It's the most highest skilled form of the game. It's the one that all the players love to play the most. But from a spectator perspective, sitting in front of a game for 5 days is just way too much commitment.
Yeah.
So they created a game called 2020, which is like all done and dusted in 3 hours. Each team just bats and bowls for a short period of time, and it's more spectator friendly. There's a lot of big hitting and hitting the ball out of the park and all this kind of stuff. And I sort of believe that the game that we play at the moment is Test cricket. It's the traditionalist game. It's the game that has the most number of facets to it, and is super interesting to play because it is three teams. But the game that we take out into the world for broadcast and for prize money and to actually grow the popularity of the sport is a two-team game, like what you're talking about. Possibly like a capture the flag or base flags style of game, or King of the Hill or something, because the game that we play at the moment is far too complicated for a brand new viewer to understand. There's too many focal points going on, so there's dueling happening in multiple areas all through the arena. So trying to broadcast that and make sense of it in a broadcast sense is difficult.
Yeah.
Whereas if we strip it down to two teams, we reduce the numbers right back to 3 or 4 players per team. It becomes much easier to understand what's going on for somebody who's new, and also means that broadcasting it becomes infinitely easier, because we can, especially with base flags or King of the Hill or something like that, we're going to have only 1 or 2 focal points at any one time. So it's going to be very easy to broadcast it and spectate it. And it also resolves the issue that you were talking about with prize money, where it's just a head-to-head battle. There's no such thing as collusion, and we take that whole piece out of the equation. So yeah, totally agree with what you're saying around, if we're going to take it to the next level, is the 3-team game the best? I don't think so, but I think it's the game the traditionalists will always love.
Yeah, it is. As a player, it's the most fun game. If I'm going to pay to play, as I do now, I'm going for the 3-comp and the elimination, which is my favorite one still. Yeah,
true.
I agree with you, but I just figure at some point there will be a change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I would just like to sort of a little bit about the side events. When you play, you have the triples, and you did try the elimination last year, I think, but with the target cards.
Yeah, it was fun, but what happened is the targets played too much of a role in the game, and essentially what happened is the winning strategy was to find the area with the most targets, just dominate it, don't worry about eliminating players, and just shoot the targets the whole time.
Yep.
So yeah, it didn't turn out too great.
Okay.
It was still fun, but if they had to turn the targets off, it would have been better.
yeah, I would agree on that one. If we talk a little bit about elimination, it's not really big in Australia and New Zealand. From what I understand, it's really, when we play in Sweden, if we have a members' night, we would probably play, let's say we play 10 games. We would play 6 games of elimination probably, and 4 games of the Swedish format.
Wow.
You don't play elimination at all, or?
We don't, and it's only because we can't fit it into our event. And on a personal level, I love elimination. I think it's an awesome format, and I love that when we went to Worlds or 2014, it was played as the first event, so that players got familiarity with the entire arena before the main team event, because in elimination you tend to use much more of the arena than you do in the standard game.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great event that you can play with your full team that isn't the team event, the standard team event, and we don't have that at our nationals. We have the team event, and then we have all these other side events where you're playing with 1 or 2 other players or yourself, but we don't have that other event where you can play with your team. So I know there's a lot of people in Australia that would love to add that to our calendar, but we just don't have the time, unfortunately, in the schedule to fit it at the moment.
Okay. All right. So, lastly, I would like to talk a little bit about the relation between Australia and the rest of the world, because we would like to see. I can understand. It's a money thing, like going from Australia to Europe to Australia is not really cheap. But what do you think is preventing Australians going to European nationals? Besides, is it just the money thing, or is it something else?
To be honest, it's not even on anybody's radar. I never hear anybody talking about, I really want to go to Europe to play or anything like that. And a big part of that's probably that just lack of awareness about what might be available for them there. It's a different format, so there might be some apprehension around the ability to compete. Cost is going to be a massive factor. They're also getting really well fed here locally with what we have. So, on a social level and on a competitive level. So, I'd say a combination of all those things is influencing it. How to close the gap? I think in the past, I would say that, and this is just my own projection here, but there's probably been not as much respect for the Australian format, the Australian scene, as there is now. I think it's growing. I think there's a growing acknowledgement that there's something happening down here that's worthwhile checking out. Whereas before it was just a bunch of people who played on 2 shots a second, and that was the inferior format.
Yeah.
But I think that perception is starting to shift, and I think we've got more open-minded people who are looking at these things now. And as GP come down and compete, and you come over and compete, and we can get to know players and talk about it more and open up the opportunity, like through friendship and through just awareness of what's available in Europe. I think there's no reason why that can't change, actually. And I know just on a personal level for myself, I've always been intrigued and wanted to come over, but it's people are busy and things like that. I'm a site operator, so getting away from the site, especially when you take a couple of weeks away for nationals, is difficult. But I think you make these things happen if you want them to happen. And I think by you guys coming over and participating, and there's more stuff going up online now, more like got GP doing their thing on Facebook and their video logs, and you're doing things like this podcast, and all those things are going to start to inform the players more here locally about what's out there. I think it's a bit of a closed circle down here. We're like a little contained little unit down here, and there's not that much awareness of what's actually going on in the rest of the world in Lasertag.
Yeah.
So as we open up the doors, I think we'll probably start to see a lot more interest.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Never know.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks for taking your time. Yeah. See you.
No worries, mate. Yeah, we'll see you around.
See you. I was a little bit disappointed after probably talking with Butza. Disappointed might not be the right word. I was a little confused. I was hoping for him to defend the settings, the Australian Nats, more. But he was choosing to be diplomatic. It's honorable. It's nice. And I wish everyone was like that. But in this sense, we wanted to make the Australian format sort of shine and explain exactly why it is the best option for them. Now it was a little bit like, maybe we can change this, and maybe this is better than that, and but still, okay. The Australian format is what it is. It does make sense if you put all the components together. It's very alien for us, so I'm not talking like saying that it's different. It's different for me. Of course, in Australia it's the other way around, but it sort of makes sense. Like if you have no stuns and you have 2 shots per second, which is sort of the core, is the amount of shots, I guess. And then you need to have the reloads, the stuns. I see where they're going. The mentality is different. The team play coming, is most important, and not much to say about that actually. And we always have to remember that Australia is the most growing country, when it comes to lasertag, zone lasertag, and they're doing something right. They got 37 teams. That's more than Swedish Nats, Finnish Nats, US Nats put together. So, not much to say. Then we were talking a little bit about if it's the settings, if it's this next generation that and the older generation who is sort of contributing, if it's the site operators, choosing to be very supportive of the sport. It's hard to know, or it's a mix of all. So anyways, next one and the last one of the interviews is with Joel from Stockholm, Sweden, from the East Coast. Stockholm is the capital of Sweden. I'm from the West Coast. Stockholm used to be like our rivals. It used to be more zones back in the day, at least 4 or 5 that had teams, but it usually was down to Stockholm and Gothenburg. Their team, he was playing in Worlds. Laserdome Stockholm was the name of the team. He was the captain of that team, playing with the name Tjärnstig. Hard to pronunciate, just sort of the point. They sometimes do that. Stockholm, the team, the main team. They have more teams than one, obviously, but quite old players, just like in Gothenburg. First team, Feidakin, old players. We are sort of on the verge of becoming these old generation players that are more organizing, maybe playing in lower tier teams just because it's fun. We are actually probably, I can't speak for them, but in Gothenburg we are sort of waiting for a new generation to take over, to be better than us. hopefully it will happen soon, so we can move on and be like organizers full time, just contribute to the sport. I think that is a vital thing for Australia, that they have this like Doug and Mopar, or I don't even know the names of everyone, but like Doc, or even the Maroons that are sort of retiring now to contribute instead. That does a lot. So if we talk a little bit about like Stockholm, it's where the Swedish format started. We don't say Swedish format in Finland. They don't say Swedish format. Nobody says Swedish format in Europe. They say it in America. Maybe they say it in New Zealand. It's more of a tribute to Sweden. Like it's what we've done for the global scene. You know, it's the 3-on-3 against one base. It's fun. It's what we play in Sweden. In Stockholm, they play it a lot. Basically, we play, and I think this goes for both Gothenburg and Stockholm. We play the 2-team elimination and the base run Swedish format. Call it whatever you like. That is actually what is like the main events in Sweden. We do play 3-comp every now and then. It is sort of, it's not controversial, but it still is 3 teams. I know I'm very much against anything with more than 2 teams, unless it's a fun game. I can enjoy like elimination with 8 teams. I think it's cool, but so I won't say I speak for the entire Swedish community when I say I'm questioning 3-comp because it has 3 teams. I know there's a lot of Swedish players who love to play 3-comp, so that's not. I won't say it's a Swedish opinion. It's just mine. And I know there are more people, but in general, I think 3-comp is the only multi-team format that goes. In European Championships, we play the 4-team elimination. It's not really a Swedish thing, it's more of a Finnish thing. It's okay, it's better than 3 teams. Well, anyways, now I'm just talking about myself here. So, anyways, let's listen and hear what Joel has to say. So, I'm sitting here with Joel from Stockholm. Hello, Joel.
Hello.
You were playing in Worlds last year using Stjärnstig as a nickname.
Yes. Some Australian might know me as the Stig.
The Stig?
They called me that in the end because they couldn't pronounce my last name.
Nice.
Yes.
All right, then. Could you tell me a little bit about the Stockholm team? It really has no name in difference from many other teams. It's just Laserdome Stockholm.
Last Worlds, or
yeah, well, like when you send your A team.
in Stockholm we do stuff a bit differently from since we had this organization since a long time ago. I think we were one of the first in Nordic countries to have an organization behind our competitive Lasertag scene in Stockholm. So we let that organization take care of basically everything we do, including forming the teams. So we don't really have a set group of 5 or 6 players as most other sites have, but instead we send the best players at the moment to represent our first team, and then we have usually 2 teams.
Well, that's cool. I didn't even know that. I thought you had like a first lineup. Isn't that hard? Like usually you get to know like some players are good together but not separately.
We play so much together, and usually we are. It's almost the same players that is like in the top tier in Stockholm. So and we have played a lot together.
We have seen Stockholm. You were playing in Worlds. You placing 9th, I think. You had the French teams behind you, and then you were the first of the established teams to go out. We haven't seen so much of Stockholm. You really were dominating back, just going back like years. Has something changed in your scene, or?
Yeah, well, I think our top players were inactive since we really didn't. At least we were a group of 4 players that really haven't trained since 2014, and the 4 players me, Jocke, White Falls, and Kickoman. really stopped training when we took the sort of Swedish triple in 2014, I think.
Maybe.
And yeah, since then it's been pretty dead. But afterwards, we sort of woke up again, or we wanted to get to the top again.
You found the energy.
Yeah, we found the energy to play, to really train again, and since then we've been pretty active, actually.
That's good. That's good on a personal note, because we've been talking in Gothenburg that we need like a counterpart in Sweden, someone to practice against, and that really is like the Stockholm first lineup is important for the Swedish zone.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we think the same of you, and yeah, it hasn't been really any tournaments to show up since we started training. So, and this Swedish Nats will be the first one that we'll see how good we are right now. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, that's cool. So we are talking about. We will be talking about the difference between worlds and European settings.
Yeah.
For the record, Sweden differs a little bit from the European, mainly with the 6 seconds in the activation time. The European is 7 seconds from. With the European Championships coming up, it will be 7 seconds. So 7 seconds will be like the European style, going from there. Besides that, we will compare. So let's start with this. The 7-3, let's say 6-3 for the sake of argument, because that's what you play. We play with 6-3. Worlds play with 8-4. Will probably become 8-3. Can you talk a little bit about the difference, since you just played both, more or less? You played in Belfort 8 seconds. And
yeah, well, the obvious difference is the pace in the game. It's obvious that the tempo during the games is a lot higher when you have 6-3 than 8-4 that we played in last Worlds. And the other difference that is not that obvious to some people is that amount of potential pack points in each games is higher when you have 6-3, and it's quite a lot, actually. And by that doesn't mean that the actual points is higher, but you have the potential to score a lot more from the packs. Yeah, we in Sweden like that. I think it gives a much better balance between like the points you get from the bases and the points you get from the packs. I think that with 8-4 or 8-3, the bases play a too big role.
Yeah, also the whole setup with the defense with the 8 seconds deactivation time. It's
that's a bit weird as well, that you actually have time to shoot 2 players and still you have all the time you need to get the base. So it's almost impossible to defend the base with just 2 players. You can actually manage to do that if you're really good with our settings.
Yeah. Also, speaking about defense, the reloads, another big difference. And we have been talking before about reloads, and we were sort of talking about why it even exists. So I've been interviewing people from the US, from Australia and New Zealand. They all play with reloads, asking for the reasons. So I will actually give you the reasons that they list.
Yeah.
And the big reason is that if you have bases that are easier to defend, like from the inside, and the defenders can just stand there and shoot, they will never won't have to leave the base at any point if they are so strong in the base. That's one. And the other one is that you have to play better as a team. Like when you defend, you have to keep track of your lives, and you can't just stand there and die, because then you will have to go and reload and lose the base because you play destructively, so sort of, yeah, something like this. And the third one is that when you attack, you can't just stand by the base waiting for, you know, an opportunity to sort of randomly happen, because you will run out of lives. And you have to attack in a sort of like a pattern, or with a strategy to get the base, or you will run out of lives and you have to go and reload and get, you know, that those are the reasons listed. So could you talk? Yeah. So if you talk a little bit about reloads with that in mind.
Regarding the first one, with the bases being too strong to stand inside, I mean, we don't have those bases in Sweden, neither in Gothenburg or in Stockholm. I think they look really good to defend the Helsinki ones, but I haven't tried them. But I still think the number of shots you have is more than enough to. I mean, you have like 45 shots, right?
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that if you're not gonna get shut out of the base before you shoot 45 shots, you're gonna win the game anyway. I don't really see that as a valid excuse for the I don't know, the lose of momentum you have from having to go to the reload. And
yeah, I suppose the 2 shot per second that they use sort of affects it as well.
Yeah, that's true. Then you should have less shots before you reload on 1 shot per second, actually.
Yeah, maybe 20.
Yeah, or something like that. I mean, the other reasons are more team play oriented, or like you have to adapt your strategy. I mean, we haven't played that much with reload, so I can't really tell you a lot about that, because I don't really know how much it affects. Every time I play with it, I played 3 tournaments with reloads, I think, and it's been really annoying for me and my team every time. And
yeah, but did it like change anything? Like, did you have to change your tactics? We didn't change our tactics at all based on the reloads. They were just
not as a team. We didn't change it as a team. It was more like our communication within the team changed a bit. Like if your teammates have to reload and you have 2 left, maybe it's good to reload as well, so you don't lose more time later on when you attack or defend.
Yeah.
Because when you have 8 seconds deac and you lose one player in the defense, for example, that's equal to giving up a base. So then you might as well reload the whole team.
Yeah.
So you don't give up more bases later on.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm still unsure, but I figured the whole defense attack thing, there might be something to it if you're used to it. But yeah. Okay, so for the record, did you see any benefit with reloads during Worlds?
No, not really. I thought it was. No, I didn't.
No, okay. Yeah, okay. Moving on. We got another setting that not a lot of people think about, but it's the game length. We use 12 minutes in Worlds.
Yeah.
Did you see any reason, like any positive or negative effect from using 12 minutes instead of 10?
One sort of small positive effect that I saw was since we had 8 seconds deac time, the 12 minutes in game time sort of balanced out the pack points versus the base points. So since you still have the same amount of base points, 12 minutes in game time increases the potential amount of pack points.
No, that's true.
So that was the positive, I think, because I think it's an unfair balance when you have 10 minutes game time and 8 seconds TAC. But I think the better solution to that problem is to lower the DAC, obviously. And that's the only sort of positive I have with 12 minutes. The negative side, I think it's, well, you have too much time for the bases, so a lot of matches just end up with people trying to get as much pack points as possible because everyone has all the bases.
Yeah, the 30 base games.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we look at something that hasn't been brought forward by any other countries, probably because their bases are built a lot tougher than Swedish bases.
Yeah.
Are our bases in Sweden too simple? Too easy? Should they be more like forts?
I don't think so. I think our bases offer a lot of versatility because those fort-like bases. I mean, you have to have someone inside the base that usually is clueless of what's going on outside. And our bases actually enables that player inside the base to actually engage in what happens outside, and I think that's a lot more fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have our favorite game in Sweden, Base Run, and it's simply a lot more fun to play it on our kind of bases than these fort-like bases.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. I'm curious on your take of the world's elimination with 1 shot per second and 3 teams on the field.
If you have 3 teams in eliminations, tactically it's really flawed because, I mean, you can sort of wait out the other 2 teams to take lives on each other, and then you can, if you go for the sweep, that's the best way to do it usually. If you're not already a lot better than both of them. So 3 teams in elimination is really not balanced, and it's not fair, I think. So that's all I have to say about the 3 teams. I think it's a little bit better to play with 4 teams if you have to have more than 2 teams on the arena, but not by a lot. And half a shot per second it's just more fun to play with on elimination, and it sort of endorses movements as well because you can actually move quite a lot between the shots. So, and you really have to think when you shoot because, well, you're wasting a lot of time every time you shoot. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. We have been discussing using 2 teams in elimination. Not in Sweden. It's for Sweden. That's the standard.
Yeah.
Won't be used in Swedish nats, unfortunately, because of time reasons. But people are saying that, okay, let's say we play 2 teams against each other. We play elimination, and we are good at elimination, but not so strong duelists. So you are not so good at elimination, but you are strong duelists. So you just start on top of us, and you just start dueling. That is actually the only reason people don't want to do it, more or less.
But then I would say that, like, if you're a strong duelist, you are good at that kind of elimination, I guess. And I mean, yeah, they're welcome to try. I don't think it's that easy to just duel out every player because the times it would work is when you're all the 5 players are better duelists than all of the 5 players on the other teams. Then it would work. I don't think it would be that easy to do that kind of strategy if let's say you have 1 player that's a worse duelist than one of the other teams and the 4 others. I think it's a bit more complicated than that.
Yeah.
I think that's simplifying the game to say that.
It is. But yeah, I agree with you. And I think that's what our last topic will be about, is the two teams play, like two team formats in the future. If we talk sports, zone, sponsorship, maybe prize money, is it even possible to have a 3-team format as the main event?
I don't think so. I think it's we're getting close to the peak of 3-team events, actually. Simply because it's too hard to spectate. Even if you would get a whole picture of the arena, it's a bit much stuff that happens at the same time to take in, so you wouldn't be able to closely follow the game anyway, I think.
Yeah.
Even with super high technology where you could track all players, I don't think you could do that. So I think that some kind of 2-team format is the best, and obviously, as a Swede, I think that base run is the best way to play a 2-team format, and it's easy to follow, and it's actually spectatable, even in the arena.
Yeah.
So for me, that's the way to go, I think, because it's the most fun for the players, and it's still spectatable.
Agree. I'm a big fan of the Team Elim 5-on-5.
Yeah, but I think that team elimination has the problem of spectating as well. At least right now, technology can solve a lot of that problems with tracking, but you still would miss all the small interesting moves that happens during an elimination game that makes the elimination fun.
True.
So
true. Then you would need like shoulder cams and a mini map.
Yeah, something like that.
Visible. Yeah, something like that. So yeah, base run is the high ranked alternative.
Yeah, at least for me, and
yeah,
and I think most in Stockholm as well.
Yeah, I would agree. Because of the ability to spectate. Otherwise, I'm a big fan of Elim, of course.
Yes, and I mean, most people in Nordic have played the Gathering, and it's a tournament in Stockholm where we only play base run.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most competitive tournaments, and it's really fun to play that way.
I would love to see an extended gathering, 3 days. And
maybe it will happen sometime.
Yeah, that would be cool. Like base run, and then you also play the Elim 1-on-1, so you have 6-player teams. Like, so you add like 2 teams together, and that makes a Elim team. So you play, like, you can't play the same format for 3 days. That would be like a little bit too much, but you could add that as well. So it's a 2-team format tournament. That would be the best.
All right. Yeah, I will bring that up. I'm on the board this year in Zone 08. So.
Oh, you are? That's cool.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Joel. Thanks for your time.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Bye.
Bye.
So the end of the interview with Joel marks the end of this exceptionally long podcast. I've been working with this for like 8 months, maybe. Been close to giving up numerous occasions. I have to say, there's a lot of people out there who has been very supportive. It's not really like I do podcasts on my spare time. This is the first time I do something like this. I would like to take the opportunity to thank people like Danny Smith, Jonas Scott, Marcus from Fedakin, and Scott Maya, who has been listening in, pushing me to keep going. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and big ups to you if you actually listened to the whole, I don't know, 3 hours, 4 hours. that's an achievement, you know. I hope you found parts of it interesting. Like, a big thank you for everyone who has been doing the interviews, you know, accepting to talk to me. Some people I didn't even know, some people I haven't even met. But besides from the fact that I don't really know how to do a podcast, it has actually gone pretty well. I'm pretty content. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm not going to talk anymore as long as it is, you know. This is Moomin. I'm out. Thank you for listening. See ya.